Okay. It's a random live stream, probably at the time that people get back home from work or something, so it don't matter if I'm talking to myself, that's fine. Oh, there's already a couple of you. Please let me know if the sound is okay, as usual. And since you're the early birds, feel free to post whatever questions and comments you want. I got a couple of things to tell you about, but it's a random live stream, so it's all good. Okay, I don't know, you guys might just be on the listening and not be able to comment if you're driving or whatever, but I'm actually gonna leave a comment down here. I'll leave it up there. Let's see. Going to make espresso. Hello, Cordo. So I'm going to make espresso, and what happens if I do that? See if it pops up. There it is. It's past midnight Central Eastern Time. Really? Oh, well, it's past midnight over here, yeah. I'm thinking about getting a crucible forge to make metal bars and such. Ooh, see, I need people like you as my neighbors. Hello, Caleb. So I went to get, I've got a little mini lathe, metal mini lathe, which I haven't had the time to learn how to use properly, but, just in case. Any cool projects you're working on? Oh, if you were just here, the things I would tell you about. I've got a couple of ideas. I just haven't really had the time. Like I said, the mini metal lathe is like, it's like a full-on proper skill that you'd have to learn. I kind of got by with like learning just enough welding to get me through and a bunch of other things just to get me through. But I think working on a mini metal lathe, you need to know kind of what you're doing. And I haven't got a clue. So, I can go on YouTube and stuff, but it would be really great if somebody would like help me along. And if I manage to get that, then definitely a forge would be like the next thing. I don't know. I don't know. I'm just off the top of my head. What would I do with a forge? What would I forge? I don't know. Maybe like axe heads, like a proper, really good strong axe head. Because I found a few of them lying around, but only one of them is sort of really usable, and it's been my main axe. It's what I used to chop the wood down. But it would be cool to have like a purpose-built one, like a proper heavy one that I could, that has the right shape, because I managed to find a nice wooden handle for this axe head, and I used it for a while, but the people at the hardware store, they like, the lady that works there, she's now used to like, and also the other guy, she's like, when they see me come in now, because I've got most of the tools and stuff, they're like, what did you break this time? Because it's like I used, I kind of guess growing up in Africa, you do that. It's like you use something to its fullest extent, because everything in Africa is sort of built to like survive Africa. So it's, I remember when I first came to Europe and I was seeing like IKEA furniture, I was like, what is this crap? Like, it's like made out of cardboard and matchboxes. This won't last. Because, in our homes in Africa, like my dad just built everything with concrete. So like the sideboard of your kitchen was concrete. The beds he built for us, for my brother and my sister and I, when he finally kind of built a house. He kind of wanted quite a big one, and so he built this purpose. We all had our own rooms, and he built these beds. He had this like carpenters that were working and build the beds. the legs of the bed were made out of gum poles. You know, those things that you use for telephone poles? Those were the legs of the bed, just to give you an idea. And they were like matrimonial, you know, supersized sort of thing. And everything is just built like that. So, you know, I've got an axe. An axe is for cutting. So I can use it, right? As hard as I want. And of course, I broke the handle, 2 of them. Then I thought, oh, screw that. So I got like these plastic ones, you know, that are like made out of like some hard plastic. And that one isn't really break. But the thing is, it doesn't, the shape of it, the shape of my axe head is not really fitting this perfect. So I've added like bits of wood in the thing to like make it like hold stiff. And you know, the plastic still has a bit springy, so yes, maybe not ideal, but whatever. So yeah, I tend to break tools. So to have a purpose-built axe head that's like, you know, really solid, that'd be a nice one. You can make nice caltrops if you know how to weld too. Yeah, that's a good point. Throwing stars and stuff. Yeah. But to be fair, you know, those are like divertimenti, which my divertimenti is like writing probably. So I'd have to build stuff that's like got a purpose to it. And there are some things that I would like to try my hand at, but you know, before I can do stuff like that, I really need to know how to use it properly. That message is going to come live one of these, you know, there's going to make espresso. It will eventually become a reality, because it's past midnight here, but it'll give you guys a chance to ask me stuff. And let's see, nails for when the world ends. That's Cordal. Yeah, I thought about stuff like that, but the thing is, if the world ends, I'm going to have a plentiful supply of everything, you know, unless a competing band of warlords like takes me out. Because if the world ends, well, there's no laws and there's no rules and I'll just be defending my property, and anybody that's not behaving properly, well, he'll have his property confiscated, including nails and anything else I feel like taking, you know, if he has wronged me. So I reckon there's going to be a plentiful supply of stuff. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of zombies, like, you know, that you're going to have to deal with. But in the zombie apocalypse, that's how it goes. Hello, Holy Ram. Holy Ram says, it never hurts to build things to last. When kids are around, they can break anything. Ah, dude, you just reminded me of a joke that I probably can't tell on YouTube, but it's an old joke, which is like, you know, there's 3 different nationalities, let's call them nationalities, who end up in jail in solitary confinement because they're like such violent, you know, weird guys or whatever. And you know, we can say there's an Italian guy or whatever, there's a German guy, and there's a guy from, you know, another continent. I'll let you figure out which one. Anyway, they decide as an experiment, the psychologists, to give these guys 2 steel balls, you know, about bowling ball sized steel balls. And they give it to them, and then after like 6 months, they go back and they like ask, like, you know, each one of them, what are you doing with them? You know, so the Italian guy's like, well, I play bowls with it. I put one in the center of my cell, and I roll the other one towards it and try and get it as close as possible without touching it. And that's kind of how I spend my time, you know. Okay, and I go to the German guy, whatever, and he's like, well, I have put one under my head here and the other one under my feet, and I relax like this, and it gives me kind of a relaxation position. So it's working very well for me. And they go to the third guy. The third guy goes, what? What? Steel balls? Like, we gave you 2 giant bowling balls. You're, you know, in a solitary confinement cell. Like, where are they? What are you doing with them? Ash, I don't know. I lost when I broke the other one. So yeah, I know where you're coming from. Have you tried using a hickory handle? I don't. You got to keep in mind, you know, if you're talking to me about calibers, velocities, distance, drawing, position to carry, hunting, maybe tracking. I could answer all those questions. When you ask me anything that's sort of farming related, I can't tell the difference between. I can now tell the difference between cherry and pioppo, which I don't know what that is in English because of the rate they burn at. It's very different. And we had 2 cherry trees come down with the storm. They weren't really cherry trees in a position that we were using them, but you know, and so that wood burns a lot slower. So I'm trying to mix it up when I run the stove. Oh, the good thing that I've learned though is, storing the wood, which I've been doing for this year. From last year, I didn't have a chance. So it was all wet wood. I had to go climb the roof to like unplug the 6-inch pipe of the stove. This year, we've been running the stove already for at least a year. Sorry, at least a month, and it's all dried. The wood that I'd stacked dried up nicely. I made it nice and waterproof, so it's cool. I don't know what a hickory handle is. I don't know where that wood comes from. A hickory tree, I know, I guess, but I don't know what it looks like. I don't know if I have any on my property, and that's why I need people like you guys next to me. Hello, Sam. Cordell says, sometimes I forget that the Kurgan would be the warlord of the apocalypse. That's what I'm waiting for. That's why I have the beard. It's like, it's just, it's one of those montages where it's like, oh, painting. Oh, I'm digging the ground. Oh, I'm building stuff. Where's the apocalypse coming? Where is it? Where's all the zombies? Yeah. Hello, Pedro. Quite a while. Willie Ram says, I've seen people lose their shit due to a day of snow or a few hours without power internet. Any long-term outages would have so many people utterly bewildered. Yeah, hence the zombies. Because I think there would be a massive die-off, and then there would be probably some government directive to like, oh, those who have must share, or some shit like that. Ultimately, the guys with guns would end up in power, regardless of who they are, whether they're cops, thugs, military, So, but I picked a pretty decent spot. Like, even if I was gonna be assaulted by, like, I don't know, a military team, as long as I have a little bit of advance warning that that's happening, which I would have, because I'm in a middle of nowhere rural area. The rest of the world would be like going to shit a lot quicker, like cities and towns and stuff like that. This area is really quite easy to defend, especially if you've got a few guys. But even on my own, I mean, it would be pretty. Whoever would come here with the intention of causing me and my family harm, even if there was quite a few of them. Let's just say they wouldn't get away scot-free. Just wouldn't. American hickory. Vaughan is supposed to be a good company for hickory handles. Okay, but I'm all the way over here in Europe, so I don't know. And I'm getting along with this rubber thing. Not rubber. I mean, it's like whatever it is, hard plastic, I guess. It's taken quite some severe hits, and it's carrying on, so no real complaints. Oh, there's already like over a dozen of you. I tell you what, guys, please, I didn't expect so many of you to just pop up so quickly. Do me a favor, it's a random stream, so anything goes. Oh, and by the way, for those of you that don't know, let me do that. I'm gonna put just the link up here for the Amazon.com. You have to, if you're going to look for this book, which is now out, Nazi Moon, you probably have to go to wherever you live in, go to the Amazon and actually type in my surname, Filotto, and type in Nazi Moon, because if I just type in my name or something, it's still kind of shadow banned or something, I don't know. And I don't know if that's like, I don't think that's a propagation issue, because, the other books were up when this was up, but this one doesn't come up. They don't, if you just put my name in there, it doesn't come up. So you have to put in Filotto Nazi Moon, and then oh, and then it still doesn't come up. Great. Oh no, you have to go in books. That's the other thing. They're definitely making it like quite. Oh, see, and it's still not coming up. Oh, that. Whoa, it's like right at the bottom. You know, so I'm gonna put you the direct link here because they're obviously trying to well, make this not be very easy to find. So I'm gonna put the link there, paste, there you go. That's it. So that is the link to the, and it's got a, I think it's a cool cover. Everybody that has seen it so far has liked the cover. I like the cover. So Sam Wereb says, our seemingly annual spring power outage lasted 31 hours this year. I missed work, but not much else. Only 1 thumb up on the video so far. Oh no, I've got 4 thumbs up here. There's like nearly 20 of you already. Would you ever consider making a Face on Mars omnibus? What do you mean? If you're on Kurgan TV, there's a whole series on the Face on Mars with like some pretty decent little special effects, which I did myself. And the Face on Mars is 1 book. You can buy the Face on Mars. It's there. This one here, Nazi Moon, is the omnibus of the Overlords of Mars. It's the 3 fiction books, including the 3rd one, which took me 10 years to get to. But there you go. So I'm not sure what you mean, Cordo. Maybe you're a bit confused about the titles, or maybe I don't know what you're trying to say. The Face on Mars was originally published in December, I think, of 95 or 95, but I've updated it in 2014. And The Face on Mars is a really tough book to put in anything like an ebook, because it's chock full of footnotes and references and diagrams. It's just not really an ebook thing. So, but it is an absolutely astonishing book of reference material for not woo-woo crazy stuff, but actually logical, scientifically thought out things about what happened on Mars, what human history is like. The people that have bought the book and read it have, throughout the years, I've got emails for like 10 years, 20 years after the book was out that were like telling me, dude, thank you so much. You've explained to me how the world works. So it is a very good reference book, but it's only available in print, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. I am in the current process, believe it or not, and I think I'll be done by about tomorrow, of putting this in an ebook format. This is my, test copy, because even the print copies, this book, by the way, once I put it on Amazon, Amazon tried to take it down a couple of times. One of the times was like saying, oh, you've got other material from other people in there. And I'm like, yes, and I'm using like copyright fair use. If you're saying that that's not valid, let me know, because I'll tell the world. And then they put it back up again the next day. But the formatting on some of the paper books I got off it has been off. And it's not off on my PDF. My PDF is correct. I've double, triple checked it. So I've had a couple of emails from people saying, oh, the formatting of this is all crap. That's not me, guys. I've uploaded it again just to double sure, make sure it's the right file. So there's some funny shit going on at Amazon. And with this book, they really sort of played around. So if you want the paper copies, get them from Amazon. But this one, in the next few days before Christmas, this one is going to be an ebook. And it'll be, if you go to my blog and you go Books I Wrote, there's a link there now to a little store that does everything that is going to be an ebook is going to be an ebook. This is already up there. That's like the PDF of the role-playing game, and it is full color. The PDF is full color, and yes, you can get it and print it, and it's got like pictures and stuff in there. Probably flipping through it a bit too fast. Yes, that's me on the cover. That's the wife. And then there's a little module for it. These are all PDFs that are up there on the little store. So, and you can gift stuff on the store. You can buy it as a gift for somebody. This is up there. This is my own little printed out version of also a role-playing game. So all the role-playing games are up there in PDF format, and I've got no problem with you, like, you know, buying it and then printing it out for yourselves and using it as a paper copy. That's fine. Where's the other one? Believe is going to be up there as an ebook eventually, and so is the Overlords of Mars stuff, but probably not before Christmas, because again, they're a little bit complicated. There is some images in the Mars books, and but I would like to get them into ebooks eventually. And you know, the cool thing about the ebooks is you're paying less than if they were on Amazon, and I'm getting more of the money that you pay. I still have to pay, you know, whatever taxes and VAT and all that crap, and obviously they take a chunk as well. But you can pay with PayPal, you can pay with cards, so I'm hoping that it's gonna do well, and I need you guys to help me spread it, because I'm crap at marketing, as you all know. So help me spread the blog a bit around. If you've got like people that, you know, read that sort of book or whatever, go and get some before Christmas. Go and gift some before Christmas as ebooks. There will be EPUBs, so they will be legible on the Kindle. And I've got this beautiful new program, which by the way had an update, and I was like, oh, okay, let's see how big the update is. 1.2 meg. These are guys that actually know how to program, and it just works. And I can see the preview of it on Fire and on Kindle and stuff, and I'm getting there. This is where I'm at with this book. That's why I think I'll be done by tomorrow. And it just works. So, and I'm also updating little errors and stuff. So the ebook is going to be probably the most recent version, really. So that there's some information there. And let me see what you guys have been writing in the meantime. Let's see. Oh, good. You guys are making some comments. That's nice. Where were we? Sorry, I've lost my place here since we started. Right, Woolly Ram says, since we started on the zombie apocalypse, what geographical areas do you think will go unnoticed by most of the warlords, ex-generals, and the like? Globally, you mean? Well, Australia is done. They have pretty much made that whole country completely fake and gay. I don't know. Australia's done. You know, third world countries, but like a bunch of countries in Africa are probably going to be really terrible, and a bunch of them in a zombie apocalypse would be pretty safe. You know, a place like Botswana, if you're in the middle of the Kalahari Desert and you somehow manage to get what you need, you could probably hunt to eat and live there for years. I don't know enough about Brazil to know, because I don't know what, you know, it's such a huge country. It's got a bunch of different things, and there's a lot of people there. So even in the middle of the forest out there, I don't know that would be very cool. Kazakhstan's a pretty safe country, you know, especially if you're out of the main cities, because it's such a huge country. It's got under 20 million people, and it's massive. Kazakhstan is huge. So if you and you can buy a house there for like 500 euro. You can literally buy a house with land on it for like 500 bucks. And I thought of doing it, but it's like, you know, I'm not really living there. I don't really want to move to a landlocked country. It's not really my thing. It's kind of like, but yeah, if I had my own Learjet, why not? I would. Europe is kind of a clusterfuck, really. The whole of Europe is a bit of a clusterfuck, because Europe historically in, you know, zombie apocalypse, World War times is bad news. But having said all that, everything has become so pussified in Europe that I don't know that there's anybody really willing to like go to proper war. And if they did, they would be so massively inefficient and bad that as long as you keep your head down and, you know, do what you need to do when you need to do it, you'll probably be all right if you're in a place like kind of where I am, because you know, it's not strategically important. It's not really in the middle of anything. It's not near any big cities. You know, or maybe some little place in the mountains. There are guys that I know people that have got friends that have built like little, you know, I don't know, bug away places up in the middle of the Italian mountains. And dude, you know, when it snows up there, you're not getting up there. You know, if they're either they're gonna come at you with an attack helicopter, in which case you're fucked, whoever you are. You know, they won't be able to get a platoon up there when it's proper winter. You know, you kind of, some places in Italy, you're stuck there. If you're there, you're there. You're there for the winter or you die. You know, so there are still places like that in Italy. Maybe the border with France, possibly some places in Germany. I don't know. I've never cared about Germany. And again, places like Romania could be like a little bit almost like Africa. You know, like really hard, difficult, deadly, or you kind of left alone because you're in the middle of nowhere. I don't think anywhere in the United Kingdom would be safe. Possibly some tiny remote island in the godforsaken cold North Sea, or, you know, maybe some, again, godforsaken empty land of northern Scotland or something. But, you know, then you're surrounded by Scots and it's cold, and who wants to live there? I mean, I think you'd probably be quite suicidal up there. I think Iceland is a very safe place, but, you know, apart from, I suppose, a lot of probably inbreeding, that, I don't know, it's a small population. They've only got 300,000 people. Everybody's everyone's cousin, so not my cup of tea. Again, too cold for my liking. Greenland, that sort of thing. I think Canada, although, you know, Canada's got third water there, you know, shit water as I call it. So it's completely, you know, pink or whatever. It's just, but again, it's such a huge country that I think in Canada you could probably like go out in the middle of nowhere, build yourself a cabin, and I don't know, they probably have drones now and satellites like to try and find people like that. I don't know, but I think you'd be sort of low on the list of people that they're gonna go and try and bug if you just out in the middle of nowhere. I think the United States possibly has some place like that, but not as big as, unless you're, and I'm excluding Alaska. Alaska I'm kind of considering as part of Canada in that respect. It's kind of middle of nowhere, you know, it's really super cold up there. I wouldn't want to be up there. But maybe like Wyoming, Montana, places like that in the United States might be okay for you to be in a zombie apocalypse. Again, assuming that you got a 50 cal, and you know the story about that F-35 or whatever, that American plane that went missing. Apparently the story on Paul or whatever is that some hillbilly with a 50 caliber took it out. And, hey, if that's what happened, I kind of see that as I hope there's some hillbillies like that living around the world. Yeah, I searched Nancy Moon. You were about 10th down. There you go. See, they are definitely trying to shadow ban it for obvious reasons, usual suspects, I guess. But there you go. Have I answered your question, Woolly Ram? You know, you're in Israel, so you're totally fucked, and you can't even get out. So, you know, start to get some camouflage and make a will. Wooly asks Sam if he knows why the power outage happens. Cordell says, oh, I thought Face on Mars was several books that were more referential in nature, and the Nazi Moon was a second set of books that was more of a fiction, but a similar concept. No. Face on Mars, this is the original one. There you go. That's one book. Now, the 2014 version is bigger than this because it's got added information in it. But it's the original book plus some stuff at the front and stuff at the back. Because this book, oh, and the 2014 version, all the images which had to be printed and, you know, were like not top quality, there's a link in the book and you go to the blog and they're very high quality images, so they're better. Some of these images I couldn't recreate. This, I mean, I've got them on the blog, but I couldn't recreate them like with modern software. This is the original of the face, and this is using the Photoshop of 1995 with a friend of mine that was like a software guy, trying to get like 3D, like image from 3D, and look at the headdress and everything, and it definitely looks like a head, a face. Which of course Mark Carlotto has since told me, you go ahead and tell people, I don't care, it's artificial. And if that guy says it's artificial, because I concluded it's artificial based on my own logical reasoning and my ability to understand the images and so on. But that guy, he designed software to pick out non-fractal objects that are camouflaged, i.e. tanks that are camouflaged from satellites. So that's what he did. And he reckons that the face is absolutely artificial with no doubt in his mind. Anyway, that's the book, The Face of Mars. This is not fiction. This is all non-fiction, and it's got a lot of really interesting stuff in. I know I wrote it and I'm biased, but let me tell you a few of the I'll just give you some chapter headings. Basic concepts, NERVA. Like NERVA was, we had, or rather the Americans had, little atomic engines that could like go to Mars now. They had that in the 60s. Then the face, the Great Pyramid of Giza, Mars, Titus Bode, Chaos Theory, and Phaeton, advancing the theory of war and interstellar origin, other ideas which include race memory, morphic resonance, the place of science in the scheme of things, the origin of the ancients, and some conclusions. And then there's some appendixes which cover catastrophe in human and earth history, the gods and technology in mythology, technologically advanced items from ancient times, the legend and destruction of the Phaeton object, Semitic etymology in the Old Testament, and hold on, let me get this. And then there's book 2, which is still in here, part 2 of it, which is UFO phenomena, alien propulsion, Nikola Tesla, the beginning of UFO activity, a new physics, T.T. Brown, master of anti-gravity, the reality of a hyperspace drive, the cover-up, and some loose ends. And there's images and all sorts. So this is non-fiction, but this is reference material that has stood the test of time. So this was originally written in 95. It's now nearly 30 years later. The predictions I made in here have all been pretty much verified. Absolutely nothing in here has been debunked or proven wrong. And in fact, the further we carry on finding out about stuff, the more this becomes known to be correct. And it was updated in 2014 with some more information and more stuff. That's non-fiction. Then we have this, which is this is the fiction stuff. So this was book 1 of the Overlords of Mars. Bit of reflection there. And this is the second cover, because I had that's actually my wife's face there. We weren't married at the time, we weren't even together at the time, but this book is based on a dream I had where there was a woman with really blue eyes, and she's got those kind of eyes. So, and that's actually Mars. That's actually the real Mars. This image is made with real telemetry data of Mars by a guy who's Dutch, I think, if I remember right. And he allowed me to use it without any paying him any money. And I told him if I ever become a millionaire, I'll buy my villa on the sea, which I would. The cover image of Mars is taken from the real data for Mars provided by the NASA MOLA science team and then rendered by Kees Venebos. You can see more of his art at www.spaceforcase.com. Blending of the model's eyes. Anyway, this guy has done work for National Geographic and whatever. So that was book 1, about 200 pages or so. This is book 2 in the series. So this was called Inception. This one is called Stasis. And this cover was done by a guy who, you can see this is a bad copy because it's like got trimmed bad. I get like advanced, like test copies to like make sure they're okay. This cover was done by a guy whose name I won't mention just because he's high up in Hollywood sort of stuff now. And French dude, very cool guy. And he did this in about 5 minutes flat. this cover, because I told him what I wanted, and he like just sorted it out. And it's one of the Martian pyramids with like an entrance that's clearly artificial, and there's a woman in the foreground, and she's not wearing spacesuits, because in these books, according to this stuff, you don't need them out there. And that's fiction, but there's a lot of science, and there's a lot of advanced stuff that I talk about in The Face on Mars, but I assume is like real and full-blown technology. Now, Nazi Moon is these two books plus the third one, which is, in size-wise, is about not quite as big as this one, but bigger than this one, and it fits out there. So it's a stonking. It's 828 pages, the Nazi Moon, and it's got all these in there. Yes, it's $29 or whatever, which sounds expensive, but like I said, these books took me more than 10 years to write. It's ideas that's been in my head unedited for a long time. Yeah, since the 90s, so about 30 years really. You could think of it as my version of The Lord of the Rings. And it's not finished. Nope. There's going to be another chunk, but I don't want to give you any spoilers, and there's reasons for this. So this is kind of a complete set on its own. It's kind of a complete story, but there are at least two continuations that will happen. One is going to be like young adults, which is going to be a little bit about young people on Mars and how they're raised and how they live and the challenges they face and that sort of thing. And it's going to be sort of a young adult type adventure series in the sort of more Edgar Rice Burroughs style of things. And then the other one is going to be still adult, again with adult themes. Yeah, by the way, my books have some pretty adult themes in here, including the sex stuff and whatever, but it's not, as I wrote at the back of the books, I have quite an extensive author's notes for each book. And the whole point of there's some sex things in there, it's to do with like, well, if this society functions this way, what would be the logical consequences of that? So and how would the Nazis have populated the moon, and the people on Mars, blah blah blah. But one thing that like people don't know, and I don't know, maybe it might put some of you off, but I hope it doesn't, because it's very interesting. These books are set in the year 1999. And yes, I came up with the idea for them in, mid to early 90s. It started like the first dream I had was like 92, 93, maybe 94. I finished The Face on Mars in 95, so I was like, I had Mars all over my head. And then I had two other dreams. The last dream that I had, because each book represents a little bit of a dream, so like, and the cover reflects that a little bit. So the last dream I had was in 96. So within a very short space of time, maybe maximum 2-3 years, I had like this whole story in my head, and it's been in my head since. Now, I didn't change it from when I originally had it. What has happened is that, obviously went past 99, but I still kept the original story, and I set it in the original like setting that I wanted to set it at back then, because it works, and it really does. Historically, it works. There's a lot of history, like real history in here. There's a lot of real technology in here, and I talk about it in the author's notes. If you want to find out a bit more before you want to commit to $29 book with all the things, you can go on the blog, and there's a new little thing on the left that says Overlords of Mars. If you click on there, I warn you, there's going to be a few little spoilers, but there's a bunch of information there, like the map of Mars that's in the books, the military rankings of the Martians and of the Nazis, the whole military structure of the Nazi thing, how that's organized, which is in the books as both as a in the beginning of the book and at the end of the book. There's some author's notes. There's also a pretty extensive chunk of author's notes that was the original author's notes I'd written for the third book back in 2013, which is before, just very shortly after I had my Road to Damascus moment. And I still had a certain perspective on certain things, which has since changed. So the author's notes in the Nazi Moon book are present day me. Well, they're always present day me when I wrote them. So the first book came out in 2011. The second one came out in 2012. And the third one I'd done about 30-40% of it in 2013. But then my life kind of went a certain way. Anyway, enough about the books. I guess if you're interested, I've put the link further up in the chat so you can find it there. If I remember, I'll put a link in the description after the stream. And I like that you guys are bringing in a bunch of questions. Bear with me for like 5 minutes. Somebody asked, let them know. I'm gonna make myself a coffee because it is 1 a.m. here. I need one. I like it. It's gonna take me about 4 or 5 minutes. Think up of some cool questions, and I'll come right back. Okay, temporarily back. The mocha's on the fire. Let me read what you guys say. Sam Wereb says that his brownouts are it's due to being in a small rural town on a hill surrounded by farmland. There is no meaningful windbreak, and a lot of the power lines are aerial. Yeah, that can be a problem. Willie Ram says, makes sense. Snow can cause power problems here. Most, if not all, power is aerial. Yeah. Sort of wish I haven't become a digital hermit over the last few years. Willie, you can change that. Just, you know what you gotta do. Get rid of that debt, and then come to Europe and become a proper priest. That's what I think you should do. And, you know, go out and meet people. It's never too late. Snow in Israel, Wooly? I'm surprised to learn you get any. Jerusalem and the Golan Heights get a day or two of snow almost every year. Winter on mountains overlooking a desert can be harsh. Creeping dry cold that ignores walls and clothing. Yeah, that's true. Cordell says Alaska would probably be safe in the US or the central states like Wyoming or the Dakotas. Wyoming only has a couple of 100,000 people living there, and everyone is armed. Yeah, that's what I... You know how I got to find out a little bit about Wyoming is by watching that little Amazon series, Joe Pickett. I quite enjoyed it. I mean, you know, I enjoyed the location really more than anything. The actual character Joe Pickett is a bit of well, you know how I think about these things. I'm trying to make some space here between all my books and stuff. Okay, there we go. So yeah, he's always about, oh, I was like beaten as a child. My dad was rough on me. Oh, whatever, dude. Get over it. So Sam Werb says, lots of government-owned land and military installations in Montana, Wyoming, and Alaska. Yeah, that's the problem sometimes. Just listening out for my coffee. When you're going to these places, yeah, they're kind of cool, but, all the spooks are there too. Anthony says, hope Russia liberates all of Europe. There's so many Europeans thinking that. We're just like, come on. If you think they're like the Hollywood idea that, America liberated Italy and everybody was friendly to them, just wait until this round. Hold on a second, I'm going to get my coffee. Here we are, and all yours now, boys. And any odd girl that's wondering. I can take this off now. All right. Now, you might think this is an Americano, but it's not. And you see that layer at the bottom? That's sugar, and that's after the one that melted. I should really write another book. The Way of the Kurgan. Do nothing by halves. I either don't drink coffee at all, or I do like Americano-sized espresso. So, yes, it is the way. Let's see. Wooly says Russia has no reason to burden itself with Europe. Indeed. That's the sad truth of it. But, if they send some envoys, a few ambassadors of world peace, I'm sure that we would all link hands and kumbaya our enemies even from far, far away. Sam says, you guys still go about in robes and sandals there, Woolly Ram? Assuming Russia can reverse their declining birth rate. Oh, I think they can. I think they can, because they're making incentives for families. They're giving tax breaks to people that have multiple children. If I was in Hungary, I would have no more tax. Sorry, but my what's wrong? I got a bit of something in my eye, and yeah. Sandals are essential outside of winter. No, see, that's a lie. That's a lie, Wooly. I have never worn sandals in my life, and I lived in deepest, darkest, hottest Africa, where it was literally pretty much a desert. Sandals are for subhumans, really. Sandals. Who wears sandals? Germans with socks. It's even worse. I don't know. Women wear sandals. Women are okay to wear sandals. Heck, some people go barefoot. As I said, you're an uncivilized people. Even as a small child, I always wore my shoes. Now my children, on the other hand, they've only got 50% blue blood. They run around and jump on things, but I don't know now. I've been wearing shoes for a while, but been running around barefoot since they were little kids. So I wonder if that's going to carry on through later in life. Cordell says, how do pressurized vessels survive the vacuum in space? Would there be much in the way of force on the walls of a ship? Well, you can work it out, but it's not that bad, really. It's one atmosphere, so it's one atmosphere of pressure, and actually would probably be less than that, because same like in an airplane, you know. Okay, an airplane is not in vacuum, but and in any way, my science fiction books, that's sort of an irrelevancy, because you've got anti-gravity technology, and with anti-gravity technology, the kind of stuff you can do is really quite astonishing. And yes, anti-gravity technology is a thing. It does exist. It's real. I don't care if you guys believe it or not. It's not a matter of belief. It's a matter of scientific fact, because Thomas Townsend Brown rediscovered it in 1928. The US Naval Research Laboratories took it off him in 54, or rather because he couldn't get, or rather, he did get financing, and the people that tried to finance it ended up all dead. So he eventually went to the US Navy and said, hey, how about you guys finance it? And they did, and it's been sort of quiet since then. Nikola Tesla used to like fly around on little dustbin type setups. That's again documented. And the Nazis absolutely built anti-gravity machines. But all of that stuff is in the fiction books. As well, some of it is in the non-fiction book, and a lot of it and more is in the fiction books. Would it be like the inverse of a submarine at the bottom of the ocean? Yeah, but you've got to keep in mind that the bottom of the ocean is one atmosphere every 10 meters. So, you know, one atmosphere is not, I mean, it's a lot, you know, compared to nothing, but it's not that big a deal. Sam Wereb says that, for my next book, Sam Wereb says he voted for the young adults fiction genre for your next work. That may be good to do for your young boy one day. Yeah, my boy is already like, he's like writing now and reading a little bit. You know, he's 4 and he's starting to do it pretty well. And if I have anything to say with it, he's gonna be reading some pretty interesting books. I'm also trying to get him to like speak and learn Italian, all of them, which a bit difficult at the moment, but hopefully we'll get there soon. And you know, it's if I manage to raise him where and how I want, his life is going to be a little bit like the Edgar Rice Burroughs stuff, because my life was, I grew up in Africa. I mean, like, I was talking about this with my wife the other day, and we're talking about so-called civilization versus non-civilization, you know, and she's a city girl, and she hasn't, it's become my you know, I've understood much better that I take certain things for granted because of how I grew up. And the way I grew up for like a couple of years at a time on a place where there was no electricity, and there was no potable water. So like the water that came out of the tap was like salty, you couldn't drink it. And there was no electricity. Like at night we'd put like kerosene lamps out, you know, to have light. And if you wanted hot water, there was like a little thing outside with a big drum in it, suspended, and you'd build a fire. You'd have to build a fire under it, and you know, it had like a 2 or 3 meter long pipe. So when it got too hot, like it would, like the water would, it had a way to get out. And that water, that hot water in the drum would go inside the house from the pressure, and that would be your hot water, which was scalding because you got a whole fire under it. So, you know, you got to mix it up. And my brother and I, we weren't going to school. There was no school anywhere near us. So we were like homeschooled by my mom, who like gave us some stuff to do. And I was 9 and he was like 7 or 8. I was 8, 9. He was like 7 or 8, something like that. And, you know, we did our schoolwork and stuff in like a couple of hours, and then we were done. And what did we do? We took our pellet guns and we just went out. And this was not like, Yes, it was on a farm, but I mean, you got to understand, this guy's farm was like, I don't know, 50,000 acres or something. It was like ridiculous. It was kilometers and kilometers and kilometers, of land. You had to drive places. You couldn't like fucking just walk there or whatever. And like kilometers. I remember my dad once got stuck with his car. There was no phones, no mobile phones didn't exist. And he was doing work on this farm for this guy that owned it. And at one point, around lunchtime, like he didn't come home. So my mom was like, all right, kids, get in the car. We have to go get dad. And I'm like, well, how do you know where he is? He's like, well, he hasn't come back. So I think the car's buggered. So we all got in the car and we started driving down this road. And we went kilometers. And then, see, hey, there's my dad. And he was like walking along with his rifle in his boots. And he's like, oh, I looked at my mom and he goes, thanks. I thought I'd had to walk the whole way, because something happened to the car, and she just figured out he comes home for lunch and he's not here, so something's happened. And that was it. It was like, and I mean, there was fucking wild animals, snakes. We got snakes regularly on like one of the trees. My dad had to shoot it off with a shotgun, and he was like, I remember once we got this boom snake, which people thought this type of snake wasn't poisonous because like nobody really got bitten by it and died, but it actually was. It is very poisonous. Just like the people that had written the book about it had like, no one died of biting from this, so it's just a tree snake, but it's not. Its fangs are really far in the back and it has to open its mouth really wide to get you. But it is very poisonous. Anyway, it wasn't a tree, and my dad was like, like the farm workers, the black guys that were there, like they'd see it, that called you, and he went out with a shotgun, but he was just finished taking a shower. So he was like in his robe and he shot it and he like blew his head off and he goes, okay, like, one of you guys go get it. But like the Africans are just like, no, we're not going anywhere near that snake. We're like, they're scared of it, even if it stayed. And he was like, oh, shit, I was like, son, you go climb that tree. And I'm like, Dad, it's pretty tall. I can't even get I can't get my hands around the tree trunk. Never mind, get to the first branches. Because, okay, I'll go home and change. So I'm like, well, why don't you go get it? And he's like, I'm in my robe, son. I don't really want the whole world to see my balls while I'm climbing up to get it, So we had one in our house. We got a cobra in the house, and my sister was like 2 years old or so. She was in a little baby chair. And my mom walked in on the cobra, like in the house, it'd come in. My brother and I would take the pellet gun and we'd fuck off. We'd be gone the whole day. We'd come home for what we thought was more or less lunch by looking at the sun. We didn't have watches. And, we'd come home before dark. That was it. And we'd go and shoot squirrels and birds and we'd hunt, basically. That's what we did. And we didn't miss toys. We didn't miss fucking TV. We didn't miss any of that shit. So, where was I? Yeah, so that's yeah, okay, I get it. But the thing, it'll be, if I write that book for young adults, it'll be to like expand their mind in certain technological concepts, because the adventure part, yeah, I want them to have that too, obviously, but I'm hoping to provide some of that in real life. Willie Ram says, how speculative is the technology in Overlords of Mars, not Warlords of Mars? High concept or more nuts and rivets? It's technology we have now, basically, and it's technology we had since 1999 for sure. So it's very realistic. It's absolutely a lot of science in my fiction. The fiction is driven by plot and characters. There's more than one plot line. It's not a basic like, and the characters are, I think, interesting. All the people that have read it, that have given me feedback, they've told me they really enjoy the characters and the fact that they're very unique people. Like my editor found herself, she apparently found herself very much reflected in one of the female characters in the book. And I didn't know her. I don't know her. I only knew her through the fact that she was editing my work. So that there's people that make some. They find the characters are very realistically written and they're 3-dimensional. They're not just like little paper cutouts. And there's some Easter eggs, the people that know. Like some of the characters in the book are modeled after friends of mine. And some friends of mine have their name in the book as some of the characters. They know who they are. They all gave me permission to do that. And if you're interested in that sort of, I think they call it Easter egg hunt, there's, where's the other book? There's another novella, there's a little novella called Confederate Rising, which is set in the same universe, but like 400 years in the future plus. So that's got a lot of Easter eggs, but you kind of have to know the people that I used to hang around with online, or that the whole Red Ilk stuff. There's quite a lot of very funny Easter eggs for people who know, and interesting Easter eggs, and there's people in there that like some people might recognize. So I would say it's not really speculative at all. In fact, some of the stuff that I've mentioned in my fiction books, these 2 fiction books, has since come out as, oh, by the way. And it's like, oh, yeah, told ya. So I don't want to spoil stuff for you guys, because I think it's quite interesting. A lot of there's also, like, especially in the first book, but in the second one as well. So in the first book, I've got passages, let me just quickly find one, where... yeah, here we go. So I've got passages that are called like historical data, and this is to represent the main character sort of going through his little handheld computer and going like figuring shit out, like what's going on here. The historical data is real. It's not fake. And the technology I talk about is real. Now, do I push that technology? Do I know the exact limits of that technology in the real world? I don't have access to that stuff, so I'm extrapolating a little bit, but not much. I think everything that I write about is absolutely possible with the technology I talk about. And in fact, there's very good evidence of all of the things that I'm saying, being present for decades already. So I think it's interesting in that respect. But it's not like, oh, look how clever I am about, I know about this thing that happened in history. No. This first book is a little bit of an introduction for people that maybe don't know this stuff. It's introducing the characters, it's introducing the concepts, it's introducing some of the history. The second book is like a film. It's just like full-on action the whole time, plot line, people, it's just shit happening. The third book is, again, a mix of a bit of the two, because there's more stuff coming out about the whole Nazi situation and the technology and all that. But at the same time, the story is also moving forward. So, and look, if Amazon, if I had endless stuff, if I could live just from writing books, which almost no writer can do, but if you guys help me and broadcast it everywhere, I hope you can help with that. If I could live just off my writing, I would be writing a book a month. For sure, no doubt about it. And there would be, yes, some of them would be fiction, some of them would be, but this thing would get expanded into like a proper, something that if they made into a film, it would just fucking rock. There would be so much shit in there, more than what I've already put. And I could do that within a year. Within a year, I could write another 900-page book, if that's all no problem. And it would like expand on the stuff that's in there to a degree of reality that you'd be like, fuck, that's how the world really works. If you want to get that sense of where we really are in the world, read both the fiction book, get the Nazi Moon, and get The Face on Mars. Those 2 books will absolutely change your idea of how we're living and why and what's going on. So, but yeah, if I could just write, I would do that. But I would also, there'd be so many little books of like, it's something, if you go to my blog and if you read my blog regularly, I've recently put up a post about like what you want me to write next, sort of thing. And I explained there that like the non-fiction books I've written, which is The Face on Mars, the book on Sistema, the Russian martial art, and the book on Reclaiming the Catholic Church, this one is going to become an ebook soon. They are non-fiction books completely, and they cover a huge topic, You know, the Face on Mars covers what happened on Mars, what happened in human history, what happened in ancient human history, what happened to the technology that is related to these things. And it's non-fiction at all. There's no fiction in there at all. And once you understand that, it changes your perspective, your perspective of the whole planet and life and what is really going on, and even all the shit that's going on now with the wars and, you know, all that. It explains that stuff to a degree that most people will never ever even suspect. And that's because I've been interested in astronomy. That came about as a result of my interest in astronomy, which has been since I was a little kid. I mean, I was 4 years old when I understood properly, knew what a light year was. So at age 4, I knew what a light year was. By age 15, 16, I'd seen, like, whenever the date was, I forget, Halley's Comet with my own telescope. I'd watched the moon move and the mountains on the moon and how I'd watched the sun using a filter and like a backdrop. Don't you look at a telescope with the sun, right? You'll go blind. There's a way to look at the sun spots with a telescope, and you have to have a special filter, and then you look at it on a paper that comes through the telescope. I'd done all this shit by the time before I was 16. And I've devoured books on astronomy and stuff like that. So, you know, when the flat earther goes, "If the sun," it's just like, go away. Just go away. You understand nothing. It's like such, I don't know, some aborigine coming to me and telling me that, like, the light is magic, the bulb is magic, and you have to do a ritual to like switch it on, you know. Oh, hold on a second. Just give me a second, guys. I've got a message I probably need to just look at. Yeah, sorry. I just need to reply to this very quickly, and I'll come back to you in a second. Just need to send them. Okay. Just my wife just sent me a couple of really funny memes. She sent me 2 of them. One of them is just a text. "It's time for sharing. Just reaching out to anyone who's going to be on their own this Christmas. If you are, just let me know, because I need to borrow 3 chairs." That's kind of applies to it. And the other one is like, you know, where they've got the girl texting the guy, and it's like, this is our kind of humor. So the girl is texting to the guy, "Men only want one thing, and it's disgusting." And the guy's texting back, "Then wash it." That's the kind of shit that makes us laugh. So, yeah. And Sam Webb says, "Believe was $15 for 100 pages, $29 for your big book is a comparative bargain." Yeah, it is. It really is. And I promise you guys, on the Amazon stuff, I make very little. It's not, you know, you'd have to buy literally thousands and thousands of the Nazi Moon book for me to even begin to think like, hey, I can do my monthly shopping with it, but it doesn't happen. So yeah, but you know, help me propagate it, because eventually that tipping point at some point comes. It'll be picked up by whoever. So you guys are friends. I consider you friends. You're always here when I stream. I enjoy chatting with you. And again, you know, look, if I ever become like super wealthy, there are a couple of the guys that sometimes are in the chat that like would like to live here. You know, if I were a millionaire, I'd be buying people fucking houses. Honestly, I've always been like that. Like, people that know me, my friends, you know, since I've been a kid or whatever. What I've got, I share. You know, it's like my brother has come up with a concept that we talk about this, and he's like, you know, we spoke recently, and he was like, "Hey man, you know, listen, I don't know when, but eventually I'm gonna like pay you back." I'm like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" Because yeah, I know you probably don't even remember, but you really helped me out when I was in deep shit. I was like, "Dude, you've helped me out when I was in shit before, you know." Because yeah, but like, you don't understand, the level you did it on was like really fucking a lot for me. And I was like, "Buddy, you're my brother, you know, I don't give a shit." And he came up with this concept long ago, which is like playing Dungeons and Dragons. gold pieces, right? You start Dungeons and Dragons, you roll up your character and you roll up your gold, how much gold you start with, right? And some characters you roll up and they have a shitty roll for their gold, but they're adventuring together, and it's like, well, you're a fighter, but you can only afford leather. And it's like, fuck, I don't have magic, I've only got leather armor. And so what happens invariably, the party gets together and goes, no, I only need this, I'm a mage, I only need this couple of things. Cool. So you can use the other money and buy better armor because you're the fighter, you're going to be in front. And he came up with this concept like, dude, it's just gold pieces. It's just whatever the fuck we need. You're my brother, we're going adventuring. Like, we're just not in the same place right now, but that's what it is. And I'm like, dude, that's what it is, And I'm like that. I mean, there's a couple of guys there's a family in England, which, again, if I was a millionaire, I'd buy them a fucking villa right next door. I would buy them a fucking villa. They've got like 7 kids or something. They're awesome. They're awesome people. There's some guy in America that, would like to move here. He's got a couple of kids, third one on the way, I think. And I'd buy him a fucking house, right? I would. So help me out, guys, because, I know it sounds crazy, but look, stranger things has happened in my life. Me buying somebody a house because I've suddenly become super wealthy, that wouldn't be a thing. That wouldn't be like, oh, that's unheard of. I promise you, there's a lot stranger shit that's happened in my life than that. That wouldn't even be a blip on my radar. So, like I said, help me out. Because, look, the one thing about being Catholic that has been, aside from the spiritual reality of it, but in the practical, real world terms, the Catholics that have helped me and supported me and like, that I consider absolutely lifelong friends now, has been unfucking believable. And trust me, I've always inspired loyalty, and I've always had like really good friends. Like the sticker says, like, friends help you move, good friends help you move bodies. I've always had at least a handful of people like that around me since very early days, because I am like that, and I respond to people that are like that. And the becoming Catholic and finding other proper sedevacantists, it's like the number of people that I can rely on to be that kind of friend are now like tripled in like a couple of years. It's like, what the fuck? And and it happened mostly from people over online like this, that then we met in real life and became like, hey, fuck, dude, if I can help those people in any way down the line, even fucking 20 years from now, I will. They've been super helpful, super loyal, super cool, to a degree that even the people that I used to train with, that I was good friends because, we're going through a lot of hard shit together. They don't, I kind of lost touch. I mean, they're still good friends, and I'm absolutely sure they would be involved, if I needed help or whatever. But I don't know, they had that same level of loyalty. When I was at my peak loyalty with my closest friends in the harshest times of my life, the average sedevacantist is like that just because, we're both sedevacantists. It's unfucking believable. So, I hope I've answered your question, Willie Ram, about the level of technology, by the way. Cordell says, I had some random pretty girl come ask to see my ducks in my garage. Not sure if panopticon agent or real interest. Ha ha ha. Do not take this as advice. I am not a pickup artist. I'm not your guru. I'm not a doctor. And this is the internet. I'm just thinking, if I was single, somewhere in the South, where I think you might be, and some pretty southern girl goes, oh, can I come and check out your ducks in your garage? Maybe I'd wait for summer just to make sure, that whatever recording equipment she's got on is limited. And yeah, I'm thinking, certainly in my hedonist days, even if she had a camera right on me, I'd be like, yeah, I'll bang you silly, I don't care. Because I've been like this since I was in my early 20s. There was like, the early 90s, stuff like that, stuff started coming out, scandals, this and that. And it was Larry King. I don't know if he's dead now, kind of hoping. But Larry King was pretty big. He was the main, like, interviewer guy on TV. And I was like, oh, the scandal this, oh, the scandal that. I'll be like, I was in my 20s. I had with my girlfriend, Like, what the fuck is wrong with these people? I don't give a shit. I mean, if I was being interviewed like live, you know, on camera, on Larry King, which was the most popular sort of interview at the time, and it'd be like, well, we have a sex tape of you with your girlfriend or with some random woman or whatever. I'd have been like, yeah, put it up, dude. I don't give a shit. Fuck it. Yeah, look at that form. Yeah, look at that. Hey, pretty impressive. That'd be about the extent of it. I don't give a crap. And, you know, I'm not saying that it wouldn't affect things that, you know, I didn't have kids then. It was like maybe different. But, you know, you got to stop being scared. Like, people are like, what will people think? Most people don't think about you at all. And even if they do think and they go, oh, if you hold your line, eventually, fuck them. You know, it's like when I was at school and like, I started going to school and I couldn't speak any English. I was the only Italian guy there. The only guy I could speak to was my brother during break. And like people tried to bully me and tried to like say, oh, this and that. I don't give a fuck. I'm like, oh, fuck you. One guy just attacked me for no reason, like punched me. I was like, what the fuck? And he punched me again. I was like, what the fuck? And I told him, third time. So he punched me again, and sure enough, doof, taken out. And after that, nobody fucked with me anymore. And I wasn't a big guy, you know, I was a little kid. And then they teased me because I had long hair, you know, as a teenager. I was like, fuck it up. I'm just going to keep my hair long. Like, oh, you look like a girl. I'm like, yeah, I look like a girl. Come over here. I'll show you. I'll bitch slap you with my dick, you know. It's like, fuck you. And it's like, I don't like the cold. So even in Africa in winter, I'd keep my PJs under my uniform because you had to have a school uniform. But fuck it, I'm cold. I'm not just going with a uniform. It's fucking freezing. So I keep my PJ underneath and I would dress up. And people would be like, you got your PJ underneath. I'll be like, yeah, so what? And you got long hair like a girl. Yeah, so what? And I'm like, hey, we're going to cheat. I don't give a shit. It's like, it's like, listen, you're just talking. I don't care. And if you're going to try and do something physical, good luck, buddy. Because I don't hesitate. You know? And we're discussing these things with my wife, you know, because talking about our children in school and stuff like that. And we've had very different upbringings. And one thing I realized that is very important, actually. So these are all just little random thoughts, but the overwhelming majority of people on asking me like what to write next want me to write a book about relationships and how to find the right woman, you know, mostly for men. Which I've hesitated in doing for about 20 years because, like I said, you know, The Face on Mars was fucking more than 20 years of like astronomy and stuff that led me to understand a whole bunch of other stuff. Systema, again, I've been doing martial arts since I was 3. When I was 3 years old, I wanted to do karate with my dad, and you know, I was in the class. Then I'd cry because I didn't know how to do what he was, and he wasn't teaching shit. He was just like, as if I was an adult. I was like, but fuck that, I've never done that before, and I can't lift my leg, and I can't keep up, and then I'd get pissed off and cry, but I still carried on. You know, and then I carried on training by myself when I left home. And so I've been training martial arts by the time I wrote the Systema book, which was 2010, 11, I've been doing martial arts for, you know, over 30 years. So I, again, kind of knew what I was talking about. Now, they're claiming the Catholic Church is to say, well, there was only 7 years between your Road to Damascus moment and when you wrote the Catholic Church book. Yes, it was only 7 years. But I had read books on philosophy, theology, the Quran, the Bhagavad Gita, various books on Buddhism, Zen, aphorisms. You know, I had studied the whole concept of religion from Hinduism, from all sorts of angles, throughout my life, from teenager to, you know, to now even. And so I had an extensive understanding of concepts. And the cool thing about the Catholic Church is you can read pretty much through everything you need to understand Catholicism and Christianity as a whole in about a year, 2 years. And no, I didn't just do that. For 4 years obsessively before I got baptized, I studied it and read, like, I read the whole book of canon law. It's down there, like twice. I fucking read like the Catechism of Trent. I went to like look at like patristic books, you know. You guys need to understand that when I like a topic or when I'm interested in it, I become absolutely full-on weaponized autist on it. So the amount of information that I digested about the Catholic Church is more than most Catholics will ever cover in their entire life. Another thing that I've done for years and years, and I haven't written anything about, for example, is hypnotism. And another thing is, you know, hunting, firearms, that kind of thing. I haven't said anything about that. And one thing that for at least 20 years, people have been asking me, you got to write a book, you got to put this stuff down, you got to tell people, teach men, is about relationships, which I haven't done because I thought, no, I'm not really qualified. I've had a lot of girlfriends, I've done all sorts of stuff with women, but I've been divorced twice. So it's like, well, I haven't got this shit right yet. And I feel like now I've kind of got this shit right, but you never know because it's such a huge topic, like another human being, women in general and so on. Nevertheless, I also wrote Believe before I wrote the Reclaiming the Catholic Church, and Believe is 100 pages. And Believe was basically my internal concept of Christianity because actually, I will eventually address this. Vox wrote something. We had a little bit of on Social Galactic about he makes a distinction between unique high intelligence and very high intelligence. And on Social Galactic, because I questioned some of the things he said, he said, oh, well, you're not unique high intelligence, you're just very high intelligence, so you don't understand certain things. And I was like, nah, he's kind of wrong about that. And I went back to his definition of those two terms because he invented them, and I went through it, and I absolutely understand why he would think I'm like very high intelligence rather than unique high intelligence. But again, if you just look at the stuff I've done, if you look at The Face on Mars, if you look at the Systema book, if you look at the Reclaiming the Catholic Church, it is a unique high intelligence. Those books are essentially my putting in layman's terms stuff that I have concluded after a long period of study and so on. And the stuff that I produce in the books is absolutely undeniable. It's like you can test it, And so that will give the impression to somebody like Vox that I'm very high intelligence and I'm just like making things that work like an engineer, which is true. I am making things that work. But that's not the process of how I get there at all. The process of how I get there is extremely, very much by his own definitions in the unique high intelligence department. I think there's a difference between me and Vox in that I sort by others at a global scale, right? At an individual scale, I sort by self because there's too many fucking stupid people on the planet, and if I didn't sort by self, they'd suffocate me with their idiocy. So it's like, fuck off, fuck off, fuck off. I'm just going to do what I want to do. But at a global aspect, I sort by others, as in, fuck, I figured out something really important. People should know about this, and I want to put it out there in a way that they can digest it, that can help them. Well, I think Vox is a bit more, abstract, as in, oh, this is a good theory, and I'm going to put it out there, and then the world will do what it does with it. And, he's quite happy when his ideas propagate and stuff, but he's not particularly concerned whether the world, burns too much or not. I think I am more concerned than he is, despite appearances. So I can see that. And, the fact is, in any case, when you get beyond a certain level of intelligence, it becomes pretty hard to define things, which is why I think Vox's terminology of UHIQ, unique high IQ, and VHIQ, very high IQ, I think there is value in differentiating between those two things, even though it's a pretty rarefied thing that most people can't be bothered with. But, anyway, I want to address that because I think it's quite important. I think that I can add something to his terminology and definition, which is, it's valuable. Vox is like that. I tend to be more of a big picture guy. He does go into, well, mind you, I'm a big picture guy globally, but then when it comes down to handing it to other people, I'm a details guy and I want it to work and it needs to be engineered. Vox is more of a big picture guy and he stays a big picture guy, sort of like, yeah, well, do what you want with it, sort of thing. So we have that difference perhaps. But the concepts that I come up with and the way that I process things internally is very different from what you would think I do if you just read my nonfiction books. Believe was probably the first book where I sort of gave you quite a bit of my own internal development. And it's quite loose and it's not anywhere as rigid as Reclaiming the Catholic Church. But it got 100 people, more than 100 people now, I don't know, maybe it's a couple of hundred now, but to convert to proper Catholicism. So there is obviously value in my giving you my ideas, even though they're not formed to what I believe is good enough that I can now put it into a brick, you know? So like concepts are ethereal, ether, light, and then I need to solidify it. If I'm going to hand something to you that's useful, I need to make it as usable as possible so that you can run with it, and then I don't have to fucking worry about you anymore. And if you come and ask me, I can just go, there's the book, read it or don't, but I don't have to stress about that shit anymore. Not that I stress about it. I mean, I'm doing this because I want to do. But the thing is, there's obviously a value in producing my ideas even before they're formed to a level that I would be comfortable with saying, this is a complete thought. So these 20 years of people asking me, oh, you should write a book about women and how to be with a woman and blah, blah, blah. I think there's some value probably to me writing the equivalent of a belief book, you know, a short book that just gives you the basics. I don't know whether it would get me completely cancelled from the planet, probably. So that's what I'm saying. You guys help me out, right? So I'm thinking of doing that. Underbear says espresso corretto. No, not corretto, just plain. I don't have the grappa. I don't have the good tequila. The good tequila doesn't really go with corretto. Good tequila goes with hot chocolate, though. Sugar in coffee. Ugh, that's woolly ram. You know. Sam Werb says, given your bio, I think you should have been nicknamed Tarzan. Funny you say that, actually. My old English teacher in Africa, who was kind of an informatic, well, not kind, she really was an informatic, I think. She actually called me that. That's the nickname that she gave me, yeah. And there's Italian people here that, if you go to the blog post, I think it's one of the latest ones I did about the books, and where I ask, there's a poll about what should I write next. There's a link there to an Italian comic book character called Dago, which a very good friend of mine, again, almost 3 decades ago, told me, like, you know what, I'm going to give you this comic book to read because you're like that guy. Your brain works the same way like that guy. And fuck, he was spot on. As far as imaginary characters, Dago is absolutely probably the closest to my own psychology. It's nearly 1 for 1. And even his life is like kind of almost 1 for 1. He was a Venetian, but he was in Africa a lot. And, you know, it's funny. Some really odd things, like he has a kid, but like, you know, it's really interesting. When I was younger, before that happened, I used to read like the Jonah Hex comic books, the original old Jonah Hex, not the movie, not the ones that they made afterwards, and then they kind of discontinued it and they wrote Hex, where he gets like transported through time into the future, and that only ran 17 episodes, and then they closed that off. And the original Jonah Hex is the original. And again, his psychology at that time fit my psychology at that time. You know, when I was 16, 17, I was kind of like, my brain was kind of like Jonah Hex. Oh, that's a bad guy. Well, problem solved. You know, as I got older, you know, I'm a little bit more, I wouldn't say forgiving, I'm just smarter about it, maybe, I don't know, which is more like Dago. But you know, the Venetian way of thinking, or the Southerner sneaky way of thinking is there. It's kind of, that's accurate. And Tarzan, if you read the original Tarzan, yeah, he's a very intelligent guy that's a very troglodyte in his way, as is John Carter of Mars. Same guy created both characters, right? John Carter of Mars is a little bit more like dignified gentleman, like Tarzan is like noble savage, but you know, yeah. Woolly Ram, it's not strictly speaking anti-gravity, right? These devices can make their own gravitational reference point, or do they interact with Earth's gravitational field? No, they make their own gravity fields, you're right, yeah. But you do need anti-gravity to do the things that they do. You need to be, if you think of gravity as a zero, well, it's not a 0 point. Gravity is like, call it a positive, and then anti-gravity would be a negative. And the 0 point would be like the neutral point where there's like no gravity, which doesn't exist because anywhere in space will still have some gravity, but anyway. Or is both, meaning the gravity devices can either generate their own gravity or change existing gravity? Yeah, they can. They can create their own field, which means they can envelop. All of this is discussed in the books, by the way, in the fiction books and in the non-fiction book, it explains how these gravity machines work. DTTW, I'd like to know what that stands for. Do you think generational curses are legit? Like the guy you interviewed in 297 who mentioned having a Masonic family member, and how would generational curses work with past lives? Whoa, that's a whole big topic. Okay, this is opinion time, just my opinion. I can't back this stuff up in anything that these are my thoughts as far as they've gone. I certainly wouldn't be formed enough to put in a book by my reckoning, but might be useful to some. I do think there is absolutely a potential for past lives to be a real thing. There are alternative explanations, but using Occam's razor, some of the things I've experienced, some of the things I've experienced with other people, some of the things other people have experienced with me, make past lives probably the most likely explanation for a lot of these things, and I've had enough experience with that. It's not just like a one-off. So generational curses, I don't know how a curse would work other than some spiritual / karmic event that sort of follows you through time. And yes, I believe that's possible, but I believe that you're somehow intrinsically also tied to it yourself, as in, all right, let me make an example. Let me just make an example, as asking for a friend sort of example, right? Let's just pretend that you were some Chinaman soldier, some Chinese guy, like, over 1,000 years ago, being a Chinese soldier somewhere in China. And you were like a tax collector or a soldier working for tax collectors or something. And the governing guy in whatever your area is says, you have to go collect this much money from each farm in the area. And you go there, and it's like, if the farmers don't have it, you kill them. You kill their family, you kill their kids, you do everything. So you go there, and this one farmhouse doesn't have the money, so you kill the mother, you kill the father, and you chase down the little girl that's their daughter, and you split her head open with a sword, right? And that's who you are in that life. Then you die, and you go to this, what the woo-woo people call whatever, the Akashic record, or, like the thing where like you see everything as like in its proper context, and you're like, oh fuck, I did such horrible shit, I was such an asshole. Then you come back into another life. Now let's say in this life you're like a Red Indian. You're a Red Indian in America just after the white people came, and you're like, hey man, these white people are killing people and shit, and it's like, well, what's going on? And you're trying to find out. So you go to one of the other camps to find out what's going on, and you come back to your camp, and your camp's been fucking decimated. They've killed everybody you cared about, scalped them, gutted them, raped them. They're all dead. You and like a couple of buddies that you went with are the only survivors. So you lose your fucking shit, right? Now think about it. If you think of it from a karmic level, so you kill the whole family of people, including innocent little girl, and then now everyone you cared about has been slaughtered, and now you've got a rage. So you've got a rage, you chase after these people, you kill as many white people, including men, women, and children as you can, until eventually some guy drills you and you're dead. Poof, gone. Then you're born into a cowboy era. You're now fucking Wyatt Earp, right? Whatever. What happens with Wyatt Earp? He's a bit of an asshole. He's kind of like, just trying to get by. He steals a horse here. His dad's a judge, gets him off, fucking has some fights. He's like, becomes... Some people piss him off, and he's like, fuck you, I'm going to kill you. Some people kill one of his brothers or wound them or whatever. So he's like, fuck you. He becomes the hardest motherfucker, and he's like, fuck you. You hurt anyone I care about, I'm going to fucking kill you. That's kind of like what he's like. And he's not necessarily a good guy or a clean guy. Then, you die again, and you come up in another life, and you are like in, I don't know, the modern day, right? Modern day. And some shit happens again to people you care about, but like on a lesser level, and you're like, fuck, I want to kill somebody. And then you're like, and again, you've not kind of paid off your karma, right? Because you killed a little girl as a Chinese thing, but you had everybody you love being slaughtered. But then you kill a whole bunch of people because of that. And then like your brothers get fucking killed, and you kill some more people, but it's kind of like equals out. And, in this life, people you care about maybe get hurt, but you're like, you know, the people above sort of like, okay, we're going to make you remember your past life so you don't carry on doing the same shit, let's say. And that would be a reason why somebody might need to remember a past life, because it's like, oh, now I see everything in context. I'm going to try not to repeat the same error. And then if you're really trying hard, maybe poof, you get another like opening and like, oh, there's an alternate way, an alternate path. So if you look at it, you could say, well, that kind of soul had this curse of violence, right? He's either killing people, or people are killing him and people he cares about, or he's killing them and people they care about. And you could think of it as a curse, but it's kind of like you're like fucking creating it as well. So you're intrinsically involved in it, intrinsically involved in it until you break that thing. So does that answer your question? I don't know that I've answered your question. Tell me. Anthony says, what is your view of National Socialism and Adolf Hitler? Well, that's a complicated answer because there is so much propaganda from both sides, right? So you get like completely retarded neo-Nazis that are like, Adolf Hitler did nothing wrong. And then you get, completely like the other way, which is like, oh, all the Germans were completely evil and they were trying to kill kids from the start, and it's like total fucking bullshit on both sides. So my view of that has, when I was 7, I was asked to do a geography project in Italian school and I got Germany. And that's when I found out about the Nazis and the Holocaust and all this stuff. And since then, I spent probably the next 40 years almost trying to figure out what the fuck happened. Like how does a whole nation become like mass murderers and want to kill everybody and gas people and like, what the fuck? And I watched the documentaries, and I read a couple of books on it, but I could never like rationalize how this worked. And there's something in the narrative that's, a little bit not correct. And the first book that I read that made, paradoxically, made some sense to me is called The Spear of Destiny by a guy called, I think, Ravenloft. Now, this guy was a prisoner of war during the Second World War, and he was a commando. Now, he's been lambasted, and people have said, oh, he was a fantasist and he wrote a lot. But the thing is, that book is the first time I actually thought, fuck, actually, this is the first time I sort of understand a little bit of how Nazism could be or could come about. And I highly recommend it. And, the thing is with narratives that we know now, if you don't have the right idea, well, you get banned, you get like called all sorts of things, you get called some kind of monster, misogynist, homophobe, blah, 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 whatever. Nazi, fascist, whatever, and it's like, look, I don't give a shit about labels. I've never cared about anything. I just want to know the truth, what actually happened. And again, if you look at the history of the Weimar Republic, the First World War, the Second World War, there are financial entanglements and there are families that are involved in this. That are absolutely, without a doubt, were involved in it. And if you're interested in that sort of stuff, you really need to read the books by Anthony Sutton. He wrote 3 little books called, the title is Wall Street and Hitler, I think. Anyway, again, all these books are in the bibliography of my fiction books. So if you want to know more about that stuff, read that. And there's a whole bunch of other things that just don't add up. In terms of Hitler himself, again, I'm absolutely convinced Hitler did not die in a bunker. He did not commit suicide. That, as far as I'm concerned, that's a fact. It's a historical fact. It's not even in question about it. And again, there's some of that stuff in the book, but there's plenty of things around the internet. You can read up on that. There's a book called Grey Wolf, which is basically a rehash of a book that was written in the 70s by an Argentinian guy who wrote a book called Hitler Died in Argentina in Spanish. And this guy's said, oh, Grey Wolf, like it's all brand new stuff. And they had a couple of little things. But really, they basically took the Argentinian guy's work from like the 1970s and rehashed it. Apparently, Hitler died somewhere in the 60s. The FBI, I believe, or the CIA, I can't remember. They've got files on actually they knew that Hitler was arriving in South America. There's even pictures of him with his mustache shaved off somewhere. So I'm absolutely convinced that neither Hitler nor Eva Braun died in the bunker. there's just so much propaganda around the whole thing. It's really difficult to know what's going on. What is factual? Yes, that's why Willie Ram says fiction is probably the best way to teach normal people things they don't want to know, learn. Yeah, that's science fiction has always been like that. That's what science fiction has always been. It's social commentary, and that's what my science fiction is as well, on multiple levels. And that's why there's multiple plot lines. It's not just like one straight shot. There's like intricate plot lines, some of which will not get resolved until the next set of trilogies. And they started out from the beginning like that. Now, over the years, obviously, some of the plot lines also developed further, but the original plot line was there from day one. How it like spins out over the time, maybe a little few changes, but not in these first 3 books. Definitely not in the first 3 books. In the next 3 books, maybe. We'll see. Because the next 3 books weren't in my head in the 1990s. The next 3 books I've developed while I was writing these 3 books. So that'll be, you know, the plot lines will evolve from here into the next 3 books. But yeah, you know, so with Hitler himself, it's like you can't. I mean, the guy, you just, all I can go on is the facts, the actual few facts that we have. Look at some of the paintings that Hitler did. And again, I'm not saying, oh, a guy who can paint like that couldn't possibly be a bad guy. I'm not saying that. I mean, take Bruce Springsteen. I like some of Bruce Springsteen's songs are like really cool. Like I Want It All or Nothing at All. That's like a cool song I really like. I don't like Bruce Springsteen. I don't like his politics. I don't like his ideologies. I think it's full of shit. Robert De Niro. I've enjoyed many Robert De Niro films. I don't like his ideologies and his philosophies at all. So who knows? But it does tell you something about the guy. I'm not sure that I know what, but and look at the things he did. And I haven't read Mein Kampf. I've read pieces of it here and there, but because again, I'm not even sure that Hitler wrote Mein Kampf. You can't be sure of anything. What you can be sure of is the technology that the Nazis invented and came up with was beyond anything that the Allied forces had ever done. And if you dig down that rabbit hole, how they came up with some of this stuff, it's fucking mind-blowingly unreal. Because again, reality is always stranger than fiction. So if you look into that, and again, I go into that in the fiction books. If you want the Nazi moon stuff, all of these things are in there in the author's notes of the back of the book. It's all there. So that's as far as I go with Hitler. I think Hitler may have been spirited away to Antarctica. I definitely think he lived in South America, and I'm sure he died in either South America. I think he died in South America, but there's another book by, 2 books actually. Can't remember the guy's name. He died shortly before I tried to contact him, unfortunately. He was a doctor. And he wrote this with one of the German guys that I think was one of the people that came out of one of the submarines that surrendered in Argentina at Mar del Plata in months after the war ended. Some 2 German submarines just popped up in Argentina and said, oh, by the way, here we are, we give up. And I think he was one of the guys on that submarine that wrote this book with this American doctor. And they basically said that the ashes of Hitler were delivered to Antarctica in like a secret base there. I absolutely believe there is a secret base in Antarctica for Hitler. Nimitz, the guy, the admiral of the Nazi regime, that when the war ended, just before the war ended, he said, "We've built a Shangri-La for our fur, or beyond the ice, or something like that." And there is an area in Antarctica which you're still not allowed to go. They're saying it's protected for birds, but if you go and look at Schwabenland and the original, surveys that the Nazis did originally in the 30s and so on, and then you look at the whole Operation High Jump with Admiral Byrd. Again, all the stuff's in the fiction books. So you guys are asking me stuff, buy the book, okay? It's $30. But yeah, so to answer your question about Hitler, I don't know. I don't think he was neurotypical. I do think he was, he had some, call it craziness, autism, I don't know. I don't think he was normal in that respect. But again, there's so much bullshit that, who knows? as a kid or whatever, I was told he only had one testicle and he had some really pretty sickening sexual fetishes or whatever. And I believed it at the time. I don't know now whether that's just like to slander the guy. Who knows? You know, I don't know. With respect to National Socialism, the actual ideology of National Socialism, again, what do you mean precisely? You know, it's like when somebody says, oh, you know, is this so-and-so is a racist? Yeah, we all technically, theoretically know what racist means, but you know what? I'm going to ask you, if you're going to accuse somebody of racism, my first question is going to be define racism properly, with actual words that mean things and that have very clear definitions, so there's no ambiguity about what exactly you fucking mean. So what do you mean by National Socialism? You know, if you mean that the individual must be subjugated to the state, I don't agree with that. On an individual personal level, I philosophically, I don't agree with that. But if you're saying that in general terms, the greater good should sort of, you know, up to a point, take precedence over the individual liberties, to a certain point, I'm okay with that. So for example, I would be okay with people carrying weapons. I'd be okay with adult men or women, adult men and women to carry firearms, as long as they have passed a certain level of proficiency with it that demonstrates to some degree that, you know, they're familiar with it, they're safe with it, they understand the consequences of it, and so on. And I'm okay with people that have done that course to carry loaded firearms concealed, have to be concealed. And if you can't carry it concealed, in other words, if you're such an idiot that people can figure out that you're carrying, you know, just because your jacket's open, it's flying out, then you get to lose that ability to carry the firearm around on your person. I'll be for that. However, I would also be for the fact that, you know, mentally incompetent people, again, there would be some arbitrary bar that you'd have to pass, but it would have to be an objective bar. You should not be allowed to own those weapons. I don't think that, like, little kids should be allowed to own those weapons. I think it's fine for a dad to, you know, teach his children to shoot a gun at a range. I think that's acceptable as long as the father takes full responsibility, and anything that goes fucking wrong, the father ends up in jail. You know, if the kid shoots somebody or shoots themselves or shoots the dad, he's fucked. So you have to take 100% responsibility. And again, you know, in the broad term of things, I don't think that it would be okay to just give everybody a gun willy-nilly. I don't agree with that, because I think the overall safety of normal people is more important than my personal selfish need to want to be able to carry a gun because I'm safe. Yeah, okay, maybe I am, but so what? A lot of fucking idiots are not, you know, and I have to take that into account. So again, it depends exactly what you mean by National Socialism. I've always been for a meritocracy. I believe that a guy who can do more and works more or is smart, you know, whatever, he deserves more. If he works harder, he deserves more. Maybe he's not a genius, but he works 15 hours every day. Well, he needs to be paid 15 hours. Not like, oh, we're all equal, you know. No, fuck that. So do I believe in the nation as such? I don't really, because I would be classified as an Italian. But then again, you know, and why? Because I was born here. Okay, fine. But I'm not an Italian. I'm a Venetian. So if you want me to be a nationalist, then give me my country back. I want Venice and the Republic of Venice and all its territories back. And then if you're going to tell me, well, then you have to fuck off and live there, fine. Give me my country back. I'll sell my property here and I'll buy a property there. I've got no problem with that. That's fine. And then everybody that's not part of that country can fuck off to their country. Yeah. So if we're going to do nationalism on that level, okay, I could be for that. But again, you know, there's certain lines that are okay and certain lines that are not. So overall, a soft version of nationalism, I think, would be preferable to what we have now, certainly preferable to democracy, because whoever the nationalist leader is would be looking after the interests of his own people. That's the whole point, right, of being nationalist, is like, well, we come first. You know, we feed our own people first. We make sure our own people are looked after first, and then everybody else comes a distant second. And I think that's good. I think that's a good thing. So again, it depends where you put the line, really. Willie Ram says, an Australian Aboriginal would at least have some interesting stories about the dream time, unlike flat earthers. Yes, absolutely. And it's a fact that Australian Aborigines used to be able to just know where they were going to meet up with each other. And I believe that that's a skill that's absolutely part of the human condition if you're free from all this other 5G electro fucking noise and all the other shit. I mean, there's an article on my blog. If you go to the search me on my blog on the right, there's a little thing that says search me. Click on that, and then on the search button, type in ancient radios. There's very good evidence that the ancients actually had radio, and they used temples to communicate with the gods. So the priests knew how this technology worked, and they could transmit information faster than the fastest messenger, which explains a whole bunch of things in history that historians haven't been able to explain, about how certain groups of people already knew, like, to prepare for battle before, there was any chance for the message to reach them and so on. Sam says good night all. Good night, Sam. Willie Ram says, there also the fact that all sides of World War I and World War II were funded by the same families. Yes, which raises the obvious question, what were they paying for? Yes, indeed. So some of these concepts come out in fiction, in some way or other, and you can draw your own conclusions ultimately. That's quite a lot of very cool questions. There was something I wanted to talk to you guys about. Oh, right. So this other book that the voting has been pretty much towards the writing a book about relationships, and mostly for men, especially younger men, but also older men, I guess. And yeah, I think I'll have to. I think I will do that. I want to. There's just so much you can say, and I don't want to say so. I want to make it like Believe. I want to make it a short, to the point book that gives you good enough pointers that it's helpful, but that it's not like some massive tome that you have to like study on and get your autism into. The cool thing about Believe is that autists, it freaks them out, because like, but what do you really mean here? And I'm like, well, it's not black and white, like expand your brain a little bit. So yeah, I've been giving it a bit of thought and seeing how could I like boil it down. Funny enough, Believe took me a long time to put together, because I started writing Believe about 3 or 4 times. I've probably written about 400 or 500 pages of stuff that I scrapped completely before I could put together the 100 pages that Believe is in. Because I was like trying to prove this and justify that, and I thought, no, we're not there. It's not that kind of a book. This is obvious. This is what I see. Take it or leave it. Do your own research. Here's all the references I can give you relating to that, but I'm not going to go crazy trying to like justify every little point. Fuck it. You figure it out. Which generally speaking, I expected wouldn't be as well received, because, people like to be spoon-fed. But as it turns out, if you leave just enough room for people to do their own interpretation, I guess they'll see what they want in it, but they can also take something positive away from it. So maybe it's a better way of doing things. I don't know. Time will tell. Now that I've had my coffee, I'm kind of a little bit wired. So if you guys have any more topics that you want me to cover, I've already been going for 2 hours. Wow, didn't realize that. So, yeah, tell me if there's any questions. Again, remember, guns is always a topic, as are, astronomy and theology and a whole bunch of things, really. Let's see. I'm not sure who is in the chat left. Cordell is probably still there. He's probably doing something. Looking at his new forge. Let me just, I know what I'll do. Willie Ram says, learning slowly to use and instead of or take some of the sting out of autism's tunnel vision. Yes. You know, I was, you know, like I said, I'm putting Reclaiming the Catholic Church in the ebook format. And there is a couple of places where I've done that, where I thought like, you know, this guy's either an idiot or a liar. And it's like, no, I need to embrace the power of and explain how you need to embrace the power of and. So I corrected it to like, you know, this guy's an idiot and a liar. One doesn't exclude the other. You know, just because you're stupid doesn't mean you can't also be a liar, and vice versa. So yes, and you know, I think it's video number 35 or something on the YouTube channel. It's called Paradoxical Thinking, or 3D Thinking versus 2D Thinking, or Paradoxical Thinking versus Binary Thinking, something like that. I think it's around video number 35 or so. Go look it up. And also video number 4 about Asperger's and high IQ and how that works. Those are helpful things that have been, you know, pretty well received videos as well. And yeah, let me, in case some of you haven't seen it yet, let me just give you that link again of the latest book, which is kind of shadow banned a little bit. It's Amazon makes it really difficult to find this title for whatever reason, so I've put it in the chat again. Well, I know what the reason is, but well, anyway. And remember that it's a door stopper, but I think it's an easy read. I think it flows really quite well. The guy who did the second cover, who's, by the way, that guy's team, because he heads a team now, has done special effects for just about every film you've seen in the last 15-20 years. And he did the cover for the second book, and he read the first book and he was like, oh my god, it's fucking amazing, this book, it's just great. You know, his imagination, he's like a visual guy, and he clearly understood the whole point of these series of books. Yeah, what else have I gotta tell you? What else is going on in the world? I have been, you know, so busy doing this stuff and building up the little ebook store, which again, if you go to the blog, you can find the books in digital format. I'm putting all the books that I can in a digital format as quickly as I can. Right now, there's only PDFs up there because that was the quickest one to like just test run it, and it works. So they're going to go all up at once, and not instead of trickle, you know, because people lose interest. I'm just going to put all the ebooks that I'm going to convert up on the new e-stores in one shot. Reclaiming the Catholic Church is definitely going to be one of them. The Confederate Rising, which is a little novella, short book, but like a fun read, really good fun read. That's going to be up. I have to double check on the first book of the Overlords of Mars. I think that can go up as well. The second probably has to wait. There's some contractual issues that I need to like double check on first. Eventually, Nazi Moon will go up as a full stonking giant ebook, but that's going to take a while because again, the layout, the formatting takes some time. And eventually, I don't know when I'll find the time to do that, but possibly The Face on Mars, I'll try and make that into an ebook. It's very painful because The Face on Mars has got a footnote for almost every page in the book. There's quite a lot of diagrams. There's images, there's like photographs in the original. So it's a big job. It's gonna take a while. And you know, one thing I'm a little bit disappointed is the role-playing games, which I've made them as cheap as possible, and I've taken some time to make them, you know, funny and interesting. They're not as popular as I thought they would be, and I was thinking about that today, and I think it's because the average millennial Zoomer is sort of like, oh, what, you mean I have to get a physical book or print a book, or even if it's an ebook, then I have to get like other human beings to like come to sit at my table, or me go to their house, and then we all play sitting around the table playing make-believe. Oh no, it's too much work, and I'll just rather sit on my computer with my controller. And undoubtedly that's one of the things that makes it difficult. But the thing is, if you're willing to get over that little hump, the rewards of playing pen and paper role-playing games with a bunch of people sitting around the table they're huge. Like socially, like intellectually fun. It's hilarious. Invariably, there's some funny shit that comes up that happens. It's really good. So I hope more people get into it. Willie Ram says, when trying to explain a concept which requires at least I think, to rotate the idea as if it was a 3D object in your mind, and your conversation partner stares at you blankly, lost cause? Pretty much. But the thing about analogies is you can make analogies as simple as you want. You know, like if I were to try and describe anti-gravity to somebody who doesn't even understand the concept of gravity to begin with, I'd just be like, well, they're like flying machines. Like, think like a frisbee, but like there's a little machine inside the frisbee that makes it go into any direction that the guy inside the frisbee wants it to go. Yeah. I mean, what the fuck's the point of trying to explain anti-gravity to that guy? You know, he struggles to tie his shoelaces in the morning, which is why he wears slip-ons. You know, it's, you know, my analogy for that is like, if you're getting upset with your dog because your dog can't drive your car, it's not the dog's problem. You know, you're the problem because you're thinking the dog can drive. That's, you know, so. But is anybody else still here other than Wooly? I mean, not that I don't mind Wooly's questions at all. They're always quite interesting. And Anthony, I don't know if I answered your question about my ideas or what I think about Adolf Hitler and National Socialism. There was another question up there somewhere. Oh no, I did answer that. Oh, Cordell says, if you could get a set of armor from any era in the past, what would you pick? Oh, absolutely. I'd pick a suit of full plate mail, as they say in Dungeons & Dragons, from, you know, the time when swords are still sort of like the main weapon. You had some gunpowder, like maybe you had blunderbusses or cannons or something, I think. You know, late 1400s, very early 1500s, something like that. I don't know what the period 1300 was like. I'm not sure what the weapons and armor situation was like then. But yeah, one full suit of plate mail, that would be awesome. That would be massive because I'm a big guy. I wonder, you know, the skill of those guys. I think I put a picture up. I can't remember if it was on the blog or where I did it, or maybe it was on Gab. I can't remember. Of like the armor of a French king. Man, the detail on that thing. It's got like golden filigree in it, and the thing, you know, people like think that like, oh, plate armor was so bulky. It wasn't. Guys could literally like. It's like Japanese armor. You could do like jiu-jitsu in Japanese armor. You know, you could wrestle with it, you know, and like the full armor is like 30 kilos or whatever. But the thing is, like, you can probably like roll, jump, stand up again, you know, if you're strong enough. And that's why you should read The Crusades of Iron Men and Saints by Harold Lamb. After you've read that book and you sort of understand what the Catholics did like back then, if you don't want to be a Catholic after that, I don't know. I think there's something wrong with you. DTDW says, for example, if a person gets a curse based on the action of a family member, how would that translate into the next incarnation mixing with past karma, and why is there a curse by familial association? Again, this is just my speculative opinion, but if we agree for the sake of argument that past lives are a thing, and if we agree that karmic debt is a thing, you know, energetically, I'm not into the whole Hindu, like, oh, you know, there's a spreadsheet somewhere. But if energetically there's a thing, and, you know, my opinion about past lives is that you do interact with pretty much always the same sort of people. And if you're interested in that sort of thing, I strongly suggest, you watch the film Cloud Atlas. And don't try and follow the plot, just relax and let it go into your brain. That's what I did. And I had a road to Damascus moment after that. you interact with the same sort of people in similar sort of ways. So, you know, a person that maybe was your daughter in one life is your sister in another, or somebody you killed becomes your brother or your father, or you know, your wife becomes your child and vice versa. It's like, and it sounds, you know, when I say it like this, it sounds really sick and incestuous, but it's not that, because it's souls, and it's like a soul is a pure thing, and it's just a soul interacting with another soul. Then when we incarnate, there's all these other rules that do apply and should apply and are correct to apply, but it's a whole different situation. And it's like energetically, maybe like, you know, like if you had a really good friend, but he was always like following you, whether you did right or wrong, he was always like, yeah, your loyal little lapdog. Maybe in another life he becomes your dad, because a dad can't literally follow a son, and there's some element of his needing to, like, you know, distance himself and find his own way, which paradoxically is weird, right? Because then he's like your dad, and like you're the kid, but like maybe you're the guy that he used to follow in the past life. So it becomes, you know, you can't know these things other than if you have those memories or whatever. So, for example, going back to the example that I was saying before, say that the Chinese guy had a lover, and then that lover in the Red Indian life is maybe his wife or maybe his sister. So when in the Chinese life he was a pretty brutal guy, and he ignored his wife, and then in the Red Indian life it's his sister that he loves, but then he comes back to the thing after the white people have wiped them out, and his sister's now dead. So now there's the regret of, like, you know, he didn't treat her right in the Chinese life. She got killed in the fucking Red Indian life. Then in the next life, as a cowboy guy, they meet again, and he marries her, and he's like besotted with her, and you know, she's like a bit like standoffish, because now he's got the feeling of like, oh fuck, you know. So there's all these intertwinings of things. That these themes would probably drag through that sort of thing. That's kind of how I think it might work. Cordo says, if I hit the lottery, we're building an airship. Oh, dude, I have plans for another thing I didn't tell you guys. I actually worked out how much it would cost to build an airship with the right equipment, and how you would do it, and how much helium in it. I've got a little book where I wrote all this shit down. You guys have no idea the rabbit holes I go down. And that's why, you know, when Vox said, oh, you're just a VHIQ, not a UHIQ. Yeah, dude, you're wrong. And when I told him, said, you're wrong about that. And he's like, oh, well, you think that IQ is just a number. And it's like he was right in what I was, because I didn't remember his definition of it. But then when I went back to it, it's like, no, I'm still right and you're still wrong. I do have a high IQ, but I'm not a very high IQ guy. The way I think is definitely not. I've worked with people that are very high IQ, and I understand what it means. And I present as very high IQ because I present in a. See, part of the problem when you're unique high IQ is that, like, you can't relate to people and they can't relate to you. I've worked for people for a number of years, nearly 20 years, making a lot of money for people in industries that are very engineering based, civil engineering, you know, construction. It's very, and accounting sort of stuff, you know, so financial and physical stuff. They're both very direct. So I have to be able to try and communicate my ideas and do things in a way that is digestible by them, because very often they can't do it, and it's like fucking freaks me out. I had a conversation with my daughter the other day about math. She wanted some help with her homework, and I was like, and she did a sum that she did with her math. Well, she was using a formula, but like it still came out right. But it was like, it was wrong the way she went about it, but it gave the right answer. And it made me think, I wonder if there's a mathematical principle that makes the formula that she thought she needed to use valid, and it might work. So I tried it out with different things, and it doesn't. It was just an example that particularly fit that thing. So her way of doing it wouldn't work. But, you know, I wasn't like, oh, that's not how you do it. At first I was like, that's not how you do it. But then I thought about it, and I was like, wait, let me check. I don't actually know that that's not how you do it. And it reminded me of when I was in school. There was like math stuff that I was doing in like 3 steps that the class was being told to do in 7. And I was like, but why? Why are you guys doing this in 7? It's fucking retarded. And I can see it now in my daughter's schoolwork and stuff, you know. So my way of thinking is absolutely different. And in order to be able to communicate some of the things that I come up with to other people, I've had to reduce it to like very high IQ level of way of thinking, because, and that's how I had to do with writing. Like the concepts I wanted to put in writing was painful for me at first, because it's like, oh, I know this and I know I'm right and I can feel it and it's there, but how do I translate this into a way that makes sense for the average pleb? You know, Vox is used to being the smartest guy in the room, and he very often is. So I get it while he would think that. And, you know, I think he's also probably a bit sensitive to criticism, again, for pretty obvious reasons. So it's not, you know, there's no like argument between Vox and myself. I think it's interesting what the stuff he talks and writes about on intelligence is pretty unique. I mean, there's not a lot of people that have done that, or like even his social sexual hierarchy, you know, his version of it is a lot more detailed than I had my own version of the social sexual hierarchy, which I came up like more than a decade before I met I knew anything about Vox or ever came across his blog. But mine was geared to, again, just pretty global concept. You know, I had alphas, betas, and scouts, because I was like, okay, the alphas are, they're like alphas. The betas are anything that's not an alpha. But then there's like people like me, like, what the fuck am I? I'm not, I don't fit into that, and I don't fit into that. It's like, oh, we're scouts. We're the guys that can infiltrate. And it makes sense because evolutionary, you know, like in old days, right? In like, you know, the year minus 500 or whatever, you know, in sort of pre-Roman times, tribes were extremely insular. It's like if you met a guy, even now in Papua New Guinea, until not long ago, if a member of another tribe was met in the bush, you know, by a different tribe, they would often try and kill him because it was like his competition. This is throughout human history. That's pretty much how humans behaved. And yet, there must have been some people that had the ability to infiltrate a tribe that was not their own and survive and reproduce. It's a very small number of people, but they exist, and however small that percentage of people live, they persist. Not only do they exist, but they persist. My own father is one of these guys. You know, he's fathered kids from, you know, different women. I've fathered kids from different women. I didn't plan to do it that way, but, you know, it's how it worked out. And I've managed to infiltrate pretty much any culture. Like, you can drop me anywhere and I'll manage to not get myself killed by that culture. It's definitely innate, it's a talent and whatever. So I had alpha, beta, and scouts. You know, Vox went like full autist on it, and he figured out, okay, there's the alpha, then there's what he calls the sigma, which is the equivalent of my scout. And then he had like omegas and gammas and like betas and whatever. To me, like the beta was like a beta, and it's like, look, these are guys. Then there's betas I like and betas I don't like. You know, gammas that I don't like, and betas that are like, oh, he's a useful, cool dude. But they were all betas because at a global level, the only thing that really matters when you come down to it is, can I take this guy out? And that sounds so simplistic and so stupid that you think, oh, that's such an engineering way of looking at it. That's very high IQ. It's not unique high IQ. But no, it isn't, because I wasn't using this model for anybody else other than myself. I wasn't spreading it to the world. I wasn't giving it out to people to say, hey, you know, this is how. I wasn't trying to explain anything to anyone. It was just for my own benefit, my own purpose, my own use. And, you know, in reality, in the world, there are very few alphas. There are a lot of people that pretend they are. And an alpha is no threat to me. I'm a threat to an alpha, because if they do something that pisses me off enough, then fuck them. They got no idea what the fuck's coming from a guy like me. Some of them can perceive it, some of it can feel it, and they instantly hate my guts, because even if I've done nothing wrong to them, and I have no intention of doing anything wrong to them, but they can perceive, oh, fuck, a threat. And an alpha is extremely susceptible to a threat, especially in terms of status, which, you know, if you could get his ass kicked by me, then that is a status thing. So, it you know. But, again, going back to Vox, he is a unique thinker, because he comes up with these things that no one else has come up with, and they're useful, you know. So, yeah, I've certainly come up with things that I think potentially knowing the real history of real human history, I think potentially that's a lot more interesting than the social sexual hierarchy. I think grasping at a practical level the truths of Catholicism are, I'd say, infinitely spiritually more meaningful than being a generic Christian, even if our theologies are, very similar. And yes, I realize that in just saying this, I'm doing a comparative, which he says, oh, that's a very high IQ type thing. Like, unique high IQ people don't care about the comparative. But again, I'm talking to you guys about it, so I'm trying to explain it. I don't really give a shit. I remember that once somebody asked me, oh, what is your IQ? And I said, look, I did 2 tests. When I was 26, I did 2 tests because I couldn't believe the first one. I was like, what the fuck? This is an official test, and I scored 157. So I said, no, let me make sure I get a different test that's definitely an official one, a proper one. And I scored 152 because I was trying that time. The first time I was relaxed, so I got a slightly higher score. So you average that out, 155. And I didn't know that Vox apparently has got 150 IQ, and it came up somewhere, and I said, oh, well, I got 5 points more. And people are like, oh, you're saying you got a higher IQ than I'm like, no, I don't give a shit. I don't care about whether I do or not have 5 IQ points more than him or less than him. It's that ballpark. We're in that same sort of thing. Internally, I don't give a shit about any of these things. Externally, for you got to understand it. For like a guy like me, and I'm not trying to be rude or arrogant or a prick about it, but most of my life is spent thinking like, okay, whatever I'm thinking, and then it's like some monkeys come along and they go like, hey, we want to do this, play with us, throw the ball. And I'm like, yeah, okay, all right, fuck it, I'll throw the ball, but let's make the game a bit more interesting. I'll throw the ball to you, and then you throw it to the other monkey, and the other monkey throws it back at me. At least that's a bit more fucking fun than just me throwing the ball and you going to get it and coming back. That's all it is. And now the monkeys and even some other humans are like, oh, you're just one of those guys that plays with monkeys. You don't have any original thought. And I'm like, dude, have you not fucking realized we're surrounded by monkeys? And if we ever want to be surrounded by monkeys that are a bit better, maybe we need to help them become better monkeys. And he's like, I'll be in my ivory tower. Okay, whatever. I get that. I'm in my ivory tower a lot of the time. I enjoy my own company. I don't have to be surrounded by people at all. But I think it's important. Again, what's the Great Commission? Spread the good word, right? So in my own way, I'm trying to do that. I think it's our job to bring the pristine perfection of God as best we can, as flawed, crappy, shitty human beings, down to earth for others to be able to enjoy them. I think that's the whole purpose, really. And yes, Cordo, I'll be right there with you. If we both hit the lottery, I'll buy you a house and we'll make an airship. Yeah. Willie Ram says the articulation and layering of plate armor was amazing. Well-made suits had moving plates for the armpits, back of the knee, wrist. Yes, absolutely. You could. I'm not kidding when I say you could like do a capriola. I don't know what you call that in English. Like when you roll, when you like a roll, like in Systema roll, like you're running, you trip, you fall, and you just put your arm down, you roll, you come back up. You can do that in full armor. You have to be pretty strong because they're heavy, but you can. Cordell says there is a great video of a guy proving that a man in full plate armor can move just as well as modern infantryman or a firefighter in bunker gear. The guy was climbing 15-foot walls and so forth. Yeah, that's exactly it. And this bullshit that like, oh, if you fall over in your armor, you couldn't get up. It's fucking nonsense. It's absolute rubbish. Wooly Ram says, what effect does placing celibate men in positions of high authority do to the hierarchy? I mean, priests, bishops, how does that mutate or bend normal social order? It doesn't. Because you see, Wooly, even yourself, you've been influenced by Satanism, sometimes referred to as Protestantism or Churchianity, or, I've written a blog post of like why Protestantism is Satanism, and it is because I'm not saying that Protestants are Satanists. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that every Protestant is like intentionally doing a little black mass, or, you know, there are Protestants that are very good human beings, better human beings than I am, by long shots. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is it's corruptive. It's corruption. And it's the whole reason why, no, the only Christians are Catholics, and the only Catholics are sedevacantists. And again, if I were to give you my cup of coffee as it was before, and I just put a little tiny, very liquid, very fluid drop of diarrhea in there, are you going to drink it? There are two concepts that you cannot get away from. One, objective reality is a thing. Everything we know, everything you will ever know, everything you will ever try and pretend it isn't, proves that objective reality is a thing. Does it mean you will always know what it is? No. Does it mean you're smart enough to figure it out? No. Does it mean that everybody can see it? No. Does it mean that you will interpret it wrong? Yes. Does it mean that anybody gets it properly correct? No. But it's there nevertheless. 2 plus 2 is 4. It's always going to be 4. It's never going to be 4.0000001. It's always going to be 4. That's it. Objective reality exists. Point number 1. Point number 2. A model that describes that objective reality and how the universe actually works as cleverly, as intelligently, and as demonstrably, factually provable as Catholicism does, and has the rules all written down so you can't dodge, is objectively the closest thing to the absolute truth that we have. And the Catholic Church furthermore goes on to say, the Catholic Church presents to the best of its ability God's intention, will, and plan for man. And it is correct because God told us that he would protect the church from error, which he does. Which does not mean that you will not have fake popes, which does not mean that you will not have almost the whole church corrupted by like Satanists. It doesn't mean any of those things. It means that seek and ye shall find. If you actually care to know what the truth is, you will be able to see it. You will be able to find it. And it is. And the only Catholics left, the only Christians left, are sedevacantist Catholics. That's it. Anyone else is not a Catholic because they've had a little dollop of diarrhea in their coffee. So if you want to drink that coffee, that's on you. But do not tell me that you're a coffee connoisseur. You're not. You're a shit drinker. Okay? I'm a coffee connoisseur because I take 0 diarrhea in my coffee. But if you are anything other than a sedevacantist Catholic, you are not a Christian. Just like if you drink coffee with a bit of diarrhea on it, however small, you're a shit drinker. You're not a coffee connoisseur. Okay? I might be a shitty coffee connoisseur. I might not be able to tell a Colombian blend from an Arabic blend from a fucking run-of-the-mill instant coffee. I might be a crappy coffee connoisseur, but I am a coffee connoisseur. Maybe a bad one, but I am. You are a shit drinker. Okay? That's the difference. So, if you understand that, then reality becomes very clear. Keep that in mind. The Protestants have equated being celibate with being gay or a pedophile or some kind of sexual molester. No. No. Because if Catholicism is correct, where does the whole thing about priests being celibate comes from? It comes from the fact that if you're a priest, your entire life is dedicated to God. If your entire life is dedicated to God, let me put it to you this way. And you are, let's say you dedicate your entire life to God, and 4 times a week you go into a septic tank and you play with the live turds because you like breaking them up with your hands. Do you think that guy is a good representative of God's interpreter on earth? He's not doing anything wrong. He's not harming anybody. He cleans himself off after he's played with the turds. But that's what he does 3 times a week. Do you think that that's a good representative of God? No, right? I'm making it really obvious by making a very extreme example. Now let's take a priest back in the day. They could not go into the tabernacle. They could not even approach the tabernacle if they had not been clean, not had sex, done a whole bunch of ritual cleansing rituals to make sure they're pure and purified in thought, mind, and body before they enter the tabernacle, because the tabernacle was to present yourself in the presence of God. And anybody that went into that tabernacle that was not pure was put to death. And there are instances in the Bible where people who touch anybody, what happens to anyone that touches the Ark of the Covenant? They die. Because you have to understand that it's the equivalent of you being a guy that likes to break turds up with his hands 3 times a week. If you're married and you become a priest back then, in Jesus' times, oh, but all the apostles were married. Yes, they were. And they stopped having sex with their wives after they got married, after they became priests, after they became apostles, because it is a corrupting influence. Now, what does that mean? Does it mean that, if you have sex with your wife, you're a dirty, filthy beast and you should never have sex and all the puritanical shit, right? That's what they try and do. Remember, Satanists will always try and pervert things. So it's like, sex is evil and bad. No, it's not evil and bad. It's fine and good if it's done correctly, in the right meaning, with the right purpose, which is to make children and to grow as one, closer with your wife, your husband, and make children. That's what it is. But if you are representative of God on earth and you get into the intellectual, physical, emotional, spiritual aspect of sex, when you're doing that, it's such a powerful thing. It's so beautiful, emotional. You are degrading from God. Put it this way. Think how pure God must be, right? Would you want to be rotting like a pig with your wife in front of him? It's not really the thing, right? So, but God can see us all. Yes, he can. But it's, again, if you want to think of it in terms that make sense to you, it's a difference between you living on a farm with like your pig farm, let's say, and the pigs like banging each other, and you see one pig mount the other pig, and it happens, it's on a farm, right? It's a difference between that and you going to a very dignified, high class, with really cool, good people, all in their tuxedos and spotless, and your 2 pigs rotting in the middle of this cocktail party. Yeah, no, right? And keep in mind that all pigs are like pigs. They're dirty pigs. Like humans are all flawed, right? Now, is it possible for you to go to one of those cocktail parties with a pig? It is possible. If that pig is super clean, has been washed and is behaving properly, is a pig that you've trained from birth not to like run around and eat the truffles off the fucking, little like hors d'oeuvres that they're serving, doesn't bite people, is a nice pig, and you could even take it on a leash and go, by the way, I've come with my super pig to show you that, you can. That's what a priest is. He's the pig. And forgive me if I'm making fucked up analogies, but you get what I'm saying? That's what being celibate is for a priest. So it doesn't mean that because he doesn't have sex, he's now a child molesting freak. No. What's happened is that church has been infiltrated by communists, pedophiles, homosexuals, Freemasons, all the classes of people that were not allowed to be in the clergy at all. They were not allowed. They've been infiltrated by that and they've perverted it on purpose so that now you associate, oh, man that does not have sex, pedophile. That's what the association you make. It's not. A guy who chooses not to have sex does not fucking try and go after kids. You know who goes after kids? Pedophiles that want to go after kids. And then they pretend to become priests in a fake church. Those are pedophiles. Pedophiles are the guys that like, oh, I want to be a teacher of little school children that can't talk yet. You bet there's a lot of those fuckers in school. Yeah, because they like kids. That's where they go. A man who dedicates himself to be as pristine and pure and intellectually, spiritually, and emotionally and physically as he can to glorify God, it's the last thing on his fucking mind. All right? So that's the difference. It keeps the hierarchy clean. It keeps the hierarchy good and pure. And it becomes pretty easy to see when a priest strays, because if a priest starts to go like, well, actually, I kind of really like women, you can see it, and it becomes deviated, and people, laymen, can go, hey, dude, you're a priest, you're not supposed to flirt with women. And you're sure as shit not supposed to go after kids. A priest that goes after kids back in the old days, he got a one-way trip to the swamp with a rope, or, maybe just drowned in it. That's what happened. So it doesn't affect the hierarchy in a negative way at all. It's, it doesn't bend the normal social order at all. It makes it strong, because then that priest, being clean and pure, educates the masses spiritually. That's what a priest is for. He's there to hand out. So I don't have to go and try and read and interpret by myself, because I can read the English language just like Jesus spoke it. No. The priest tells you, hey, you're a drunk. Stop being a drunk, fucker. And the whole society around you goes, yeah, dude, stop being a drunk. Priest said you got to stop being a drunk. Stop being a fucking drunk. Oh, okay. And, the guy that beats his wife or whatever, again, all the other Catholic men are going to go, dude, we've seen your wife, that black guy, 3 times the fucking week, and, what's going on there, dude? You got to chill out. And eventually the priest, might speak to him privately, and still shit goes on, and everybody knows he's beating his wife. Eventually, what will happen? 3 Catholic men from that little village drag the guy out, or, wait until the guy's having a drink at the pub, and so go, we're going to have a little chat with you now. We're going to put you in the gondola, and we're going to go out to the lagoon. We're going to swim in the lagoon for a bit. And you're going to be in the lagoon for 3 hours getting beaten with oars while you try and climb back, and it's cold, and they don't let you get back to shore. And they're like, that's going to fucking happen to you every time we see your wife with a split lip. Social order. Oh, and you're Catholic, so you can't divorce. You can't get away. And if you kill your wife, you're going to die. Because capital punishment is the thing. Catholics believe in the death penalty, absolutely. And for murder, it's there. So it doesn't do anything wrong to the bad, to the social order. Now, if you're asking me, what if you put a gamma in charge? Whole different story. Now, a priest is not a fucking gamma. Unfortunately, most of the pretend Catholic priests today are gammas, because they're, again, homosexual, Satanists, pedophiles, blah, 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 infiltrators that are pretending to be priests. So they're like, I can say what I want because I'm a priest, and you have to do what I say. No. If you actually meet Sedevacantives priests, they're fucking hardcore people. They don't take any shit. They tell you like it is to your face. There's no dodging of anything. There's an extremely masculine energy to what they do, tempered with absolute mercy, love, empathy, and all that. But that doesn't mean they, when I remember one of the very first times I went to a mass in Venice. I wasn't baptized. I was nowhere near. I'd been to a fake Novus Ordo mass, and I was like, okay. And the fake Novus Ordo priest there, he was trying to do good. He was, I think, a good guy to just, he was soft, and he was kind of like, and when I called him on it, he stopped. He never spoke to me again after that. But I went to the first Sede mass, a few times, and I went there, and I was like, obviously I just stood at the back. I didn't take the host. I wasn't baptized. I wasn't a Christian or whatever. And when I spoke to the priest afterwards and said, hi, I've been reading your stuff. I've been reading canon law. I've been doing these things. I have a couple of questions, and I know I'm just like, a pagan. No, I said, I know I'm just a heretic to you guys. And he goes, no. You said you're not baptized. You're not a heretic. You're a heathen. That's the correct term. He was like, he was educating me. He wasn't insulting me. He was like, no, don't call yourself a heretic because you never believed. So, you're a heathen. I was like, okay, thanks. It's the same like when in karate, a guy goes like, no, if you do it like that, you see, and he foot sweeps me and I'll land on my ass because I was doing something that made me vulnerable. I was like, oh, fuck, he just wrecked me. I stood up and I said, thank you very much. I'm learning. You're teaching me. They're hardcore, but they're not cruel. They're not, vicious or anything like that. They have charity, but they don't bullshit you. So, Willie Ram says, IQ, social sexual hierarchy, these are maps, not the actual territory. Yeah, exactly. They are, absolutely they are. And Vox is very good at putting out some pretty decent, large scale maps out there. I'm the guy that's like, okay, we've got the map. Now, let me show you how you use this map and, what it actually means when you get to that canyon and what you do with it. That doesn't mean that, like, our way of reasoning is any different. In fact, I'm absolutely sure it isn't, because I know that Vox is, I think he thinks that I'm probably incapable of doing like what he does in terms of like concepts. Not the case. And I think he's capable of doing what I do in terms of application. But I think it probably bores him. I think it's something that doesn't interest him as much. And while the concepts, the global or universal or big picture concepts interest me a lot, there's not a lot of people I can have those conversations with, and I have no interest really in. It would be great. It would be nice if a bunch of people like that I could talk on that level with, like, engaged me with it. It would make great conversations. I enjoy that sort of, when it rarely happens, but when it does happen, I absolutely love those conversations over, especially dinner or drinks, or even just sitting around talking. They are awesome conversations. I enjoy those, but they're few and far between. And I think trying to put that stuff out there, that to me is absolutely tedious. To me, that's like, what's the point? No one will get it, and it's kind of like it's almost like a bit of masturbation, because it's like, well, I'm doing what I like doing, and I'm doing it for the world, but the world is like, the monkeys. So it's kind of cooler if I can create a little machine that the monkeys can use. They still won't be able to drive my car, but hey, baby steps. Maybe I can get them to pull a donkey cart one day, That's kind of how I see it. #hashtag goes, Kopi Luwak is literally shit coffee. Yes, I know. It's been force-fed through wolves or ferrets or something. It's delicious, especially if made in a fin. And yes, I've drank it in Indonesia. Well, you can carry on. And technically, it's not shit coffee. It's coffee that's been force-fed through an animal, taken out from his butthole after he crapped it out, washed, and then made into coffee. So you got some of the gastric juices in the coffee. And yeah, and if you want to tell me that that's your analogy of why you're a Protestant, you carry on drinking your shitty coffee, which has got a little bit of diarrhea in it. And you're still not a Christian. So, Willie Ram says, I wrote the question badly. It was a mechanic systemic question about the effect of giving social power to men that are not competitors, especially considering what pagan Europe was like. I don't think that men that were not competitors had social power in the old pagan days, because in the old pagan days, a priest that pissed off a king would have his head handed to him. In fact, you don't even have to go that far back. Fake popes or anti-popes that were, like thought of as like being bad popes, very often had an emperor charge their fucking papal lands and kick them out of the Vatican by force. So, there's a balance there. Nowadays, we have people like, Klaus Schwab and Bill Gates, who are absolutely, fake and created creatures who are untouchables by guys who are actually doers, and they've engineered that over millennia. They've keep in mind that Satanism is the oldest religion on earth. Satanism was there literally pretty much before or at the same time as even the first humans were created. So Satanism is the oldest religion on earth. It's been there since the beginning. Willie Ram says, I have an inkling that it's one of the things that civilized Europe. Yeah, it is. It absolutely putting Catholic priests in position of spiritual power. And keep in mind that the Catholic Church has got the spiritual branch and the lay branch. So it's a church militant because the priest class is supposed to direct, they're above in terms of directing the lay class, which is the emperors and kings, and the barons and the lay people under them. Because, that's why whenever one of these fake popes came along, well, these lay people were like, hey, we're noticed. Yeah, we're going to kick you out. I know it's not, you guys are supposed to be the boss, and you are, as long as you're actually a valid pope. When you're not, you're nothing, and we're just going to fucking rip you off the throne and kick your ass. And that happened multiple times, so. Lama says, does holy orders produce an ontological change? Define ontological. It's one of those words that, like racism or National Socialism, needs an accurate definition. So you give me an accurate, precise definition of what you mean by ontological, and I'll ask you a question. Anthony says, what do you think of the orthodox view that priests can marry, but they can't have sex with their wives the night before liturgy? Are the times they can sleep with a wife? Orthodox or schismatics. And again, if you look at the history of the church and you have to go into it, think of it as a bullseye. Sedevacantist Catholics are the only Christians. That's a bullseye. In the next circle out are lay Catholics that are Novus Ordo, that grew up in Novus Ordo, that are ignorant about Catholicism. They consider themselves Catholics, but they follow the Novus Ordo fake church. Those guys actually are Catholic. They're badly catechized, they're ignorant, they're at fault because they're lazy. So there is the sin of sloth there, and possibly invincible ignorance. But they've also been fooled, they've been lied to. So we can't say to them, oh, you're a heretic. They're fooled, they're wrong, they're in absolute error, even mortal error, but you can consider them Catholic. They're the next ring outside of the bullseye. So they're not the bullseye, but they're just outside. Then you've got the so-called Orthodox. They're absolutely in error, they're wrong, they're in mortal error, but they're the closest thing to an official religion that is, not that far from orthodoxy. All they would have to do is accept that a pope, when there is one that is valid and true, is the ultimate head of the church. Renounce the whole filioque thing because they're absolutely retarded. If you read the Bible, it's very clear that the Holy Spirit proceeds from the Father and the Son. That's really about it. Theologically, it's pretty much it. It's there or thereabouts. It's not here or there. And that priests should be celibate. They're trying to go with the, but the apostles were married, but then they're like, but we still want to bang. So that, yeah, we were going to. No. That would have to fall away. So, they're wrong. They're in mortal sin. Because, again, take the analogy of the guy that breaks up the turds 3 times a week, right? So it's like, yeah, I break up the turds 3 times a week, but it's Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Yeah. I do the whole mass thing on Sunday. So, hey, I'm clean on Saturday. I just break up the turds on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Yeah, so I'm cool. I'm clean in the eyes of God. I'll leave it with you. You tell me if you think that's okay. It's not, right? It's pretty obvious. So Lamo again, I'm waiting for you to define exactly what you mean by ontological. Because people use that word and they hardly know what it means and they use it in the wrong way. They believe in Catholicism is that when you receive holy orders, you get what they call a mark. And that's indelible and forever. So if you take holy orders, valid holy orders from a valid bishop, and then you apostatize or whatever, the simplest way to explain it is if you apostatize and you end up going to hell, you're going to go into a lower circle of hell than just the normal guy that goes to hell, because you went through the process of becoming a priest, and you've got like a symbol, you know, like stamped on you. It's like, this dude was a priest, and it's like, oh, and now we got him in hell. He's even worse than the other guy. Let's just put him in the lower pit, because you've sinned to an even higher degree. And if you become a bishop, that's another indelible mark. So you've got 3 marks. It's baptism, holy orders, and again, you know, holy orders for a bishop. So, and you know, and the sacrament. So if you're married, that's a sacrament as well. But and you're confirmed, that's a sacrament. But baptism is the first door, priesthood is the second, if you like, and bishop is the third. So a bishop, a valid bishop that goes to hell, he's in the lowest pits of hell. Really, that's kind of how that works. So I don't know if that's already answered your question, or if you're not sure what ontological is and you're running to the dictionary to like. But that's where I'm at with that. So yeah, if you guys have any more topics, questions, etc., fire them out. Otherwise, I'm nearly 3 hours here. I'm starting to become one of those. Let me know what you think. It's quite funny, isn't it? My my Hemingway-looking beard has got slightly more black in the mustache than in the beard itself. It's kind of odd. It's a two-tone beard. So yeah. Anything else I need to tell you guys, or wanna? Yeah, I think I've pretty much covered the topics. I really enjoy these random streams now and then. So yeah, if you want to support me, please go out and get that Nazi moon. I've sent you the link in the chat, so you can look for it there. And oh, yeah, it is quite late. It's 3 in the morning now. So I think I'll call it a night. But thank you all very much. 12 of you, just like the true apostles. And have a good evening. God bless you, every single one. Oh wait, we still have one more. Willie Ram, some of the art for the Day of Wrath shows a lot of tensored heads among the damned. Yeah. Yeah. And again, you know, it's in the Bible. None of this is surprising. The road to hell is paved and wide. It's well traveled. The road to salvation is narrow, hard, and only a few people get into it. So, again, fits in perfectly with sedevacantism and where we are in the world today. And I'll leave you with that last thought as I wish you all a very good night. And may God find you in His mercy and heal and protect and help you. Have a good evening, everybody. Good night.